tonight, Nathan Leal, and tomorrow, just a bit of housekeeping, is Brother Marcus's show at 9 p.m. here on Blog Talk Radio, Pine Ridge Warriors. Him and Curtis will be joined by Greg Evenson this Saturday, and then next Saturday we will be on his show with him. That's Pine Ridge Warriors, 9 p.m. on Saturdays, and then Sunday we'll have Steve and Pastor Langford on for a very spiritual show on Sunday night here, same time, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And was it Bring Your Holy Water, Bring Your Oil, Olive Oil?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. In fact, the promo is up at HomelandSecurityUS.com. And there's also a PDF download, folks, that if you're so inclined, I was reading some of that PDF download. It's an incredible resource, and it's at HomelandSecurityUS.com. Check out the story in the top there, and definitely take advantage. Grab the free PDF book. It's filled with a lot of great information.
Yeah, and then the last bit of housekeeping here. I went to Cleveland as my wife's been having some complications from surgery. All tests were great, and they're setting us up with a nutritionist and some other avenues, but there's nothing wrong. Everything went very well. I appreciate all the prayers that we received, and they definitely helped because it couldn't have gone smoother. So thank you guys for that.
I want to know what you're doing in a honeymoon suite.
Actually, we stayed at a hotel that gave us a discount for, if you go to the Cleveland Clinic, there's a few hotels that will give you a discount. And you know how there was a hotel here where we live, and it's down by the bayfront. And there's like 5 floors, and the 5th floor is a special area. There's a
like a members only area. Yeah.
Well, we were at a hotel similar to that, and they put us on the 5th floor. It was called Ambassador's Row, and here we're paying like a really discounted rate. But it was a really nice hotel. It wasn't a honeymoon suite by far, but had a big office desk, a couple nice chairs, and king size bed. So I wasn't complaining.
And you couldn't hook in from there.
Oh, I could have.
Oh, you couldn't. You could have, but you didn't. That's cool.
No. Because I took the time to spend with my wife and to relax.
I understand.
And actually, we did that.
Get it.
Watched a few movies and went out to eat once and had a good time with it. So one day at the doctor's office from 8 until 5 and to get the Cleveland Clinic, that was kind of rough. I read a whole book and a half while I was there, and then the rest of the time was okay, except for the drive there, which was through a blizzard, and it took us about 4.5 hours. We did stop and eat and sat down, which is about 45 minutes, but that's usually an hour and 20-minute drive, hour and 30-minute drive. So it took us about 3.5 hours or so, and you're muted. But wow. That was...
ordinarily, it's a 90-minute drive, is what I said when I was muted. But,
yeah. That was the roughest part. Anyway, we're going to get into some news here, and Nathan will be joining us in about 24 minutes. This story I saw before I left town, and I don't know if you had time to cover any of these things. This was from Breitbart. Pope pressured to act on abuse after UN rebuke. And this is from Vatican City from the AP. Pope Francis came under new pressure Wednesday to punish bishops who covered up for pedophile priests when a UN human rights panel accused the Vatican of systematically protecting its reputation instead of looking out for the safety of children. In a scathing report that thrilled victims and stunned the Vatican, the United Nations Committee said the Holy See maintained a code of silence that enabled priests to sexually abuse tens of thousands of children worldwide over decades with impunity. Among other things, the panel called on the Vatican to immediately remove all priests known or suspected to be child molesters, open its archives on abusers and the bishops who covered up for them, and turn the abuse cases over to law enforcement authorities for investigation and prosecution. The committee largely brushed aside the Vatican's claims that it had already instituted new safeguards, and it accused the Roman Catholic Church of still harboring criminals. The committee is gravely concerned that the Holy See has not acknowledged the extent of the crimes committed, has not taken the necessary measures to address the cases of child sexual abuse and protect children, and has adopted policies and practices which have led to the continuation of abuse and impunity of the perpetrators, the panel said. stinging language surprised the Vatican and put in damage control mode, with officials strongly defending the church and accusing the committee of allowing itself to be swayed by pro-gay ideologues. The Vatican, which defends itself at a UN committee hearing last month, said the panel ignored the measures the Holy See had already taken to protect children. Now, this caught my attention for a number of reasons. One, to see that it was, I think this was on the Drudge Report, and this was on Breitbart, and it ended up going across the internet on a bunch of other news sites. And this kind of thing is usually kept very hush-hush. The watchdog reports, especially reports of misconduct, and it seems like the Vatican is almost protected, like the Federal Reserve or the global elite, when it comes to these sort of things. So whether this was because this was a non-specific, what would you call it? There were not specific allegations with real people. They're accusing these people of doing things. Maybe that's why this was allowed to go out, because it was a committee and the study of their findings was released. But this sends a strong message, at least to me, that this stuff is happening at the Vatican, and we know that the people who are the perpetrators, as they say, are the pedophiles who do these horrible things to children, which is unimaginable, are even protected inside the church. And this is not only the Vatican or a Catholic church, and this is something else I wanted to talk about. Many people throughout all denominations in America and all across the world have had experiences like this in churches. And it is a huge problem. It is sick, and it just shows, another degree of how horrible and degenerate our societies become when the people who are of God or there for ministering the word of the Lord and being the example, the face, of the Lord, as they say in the Catholic Church.
Well, let me play devil's advocate just a little bit, and certainly I'm not, absolutely, positively not condoning the actions. I'm not condoning the actions here, but I've been researching I've been researching the militant homosexual activism that's taking place. All right, and what I found is that there is. Look, we know that a cadre of homosexual priests really has caused a large amount, if not virtually all, of the abuse scandals. Notice I said homosexual priests,
and I could agree with you there.
Okay, but I just want to say this: there's this vicious attack by militant homosexuals against the Church, the Roman Catholic Church itself. Now, understand, I'm not condoning what's going on, and I understand that this does exist, but the Catholic Church, the Vatican, is playing into the hands of the very people who are making these accusations.
Okay, now with that in mind, why, even if it was that element, why do they, and we know they do this in fact, keep it under the rug?
Well, they shouldn't. Why do they? Because they're trying to. It's called damage control, and it's not right. Okay, it's absolutely positively not right. Now we know that the groundswell of Roman Catholics, the very people of the Catholics take usually an uncompromising stand on the nature of sexuality. However, you have certain people engaged in the militant homosexual agenda who are using this scandal, this crime, bringing it to the forefront. And one of the things about this, by the way, Joe, is that they're trying to get the UN, and this is something I found extremely interesting, trying to get the Vatican kicked out of the United Nations. But what's all behind this? If you look closer, if you start peeling the layers back, you're going to see that the United Nations, or that the Vatican, is taking a massive anti-abortion stand. So they're using these opportunities to exploit the Catholic Church to get them kicked out of the Vatican, to sanction the Vatican. Now, again, it does not, in any way, shape, or form, let me make it clear, it does not legitimize the attacks. But understand how these are being manipulated in the press. So.
No, and you do make a good point, and if we would only know if people were actually exposed when they were, caught doing this, we would be able to get a better idea of those numbers and how they break down in what you're saying. Unfortunately, with the secrecy, on all sides of the board when it comes to this issue, we're never going to be able to find out, how much of this is caused by what you're talking about. But moving on, I really wanted to touch on that, and if we had more time, we'd continue. But it's really a terrible thing and something that all people should research, because the extent of the abuse is much further than the Catholic Church, and it extends all across the United States in every denomination, and it happens many times in churches, sadly to say. Now, this I found interesting, an article from today. A TSA agent had interrogated a Jewish author because they were in the airport reading a conservative newspaper. And the article says this: the award-winning Jewish author Phyllis Chesler was questioned and had her bag searched at New York's JFK airport as a result of TSA agents' suspicions over the fact that she was reading a conservative newspaper. The incident happened Wednesday afternoon after Chesler's flight to Florida was delayed due to the recent ice storms. As soon as Chesler pulled out a copy of the Jewish Press, a popular English-language weekly with a conservative political bend, a TSA agent eyed her with suspicion, approached the author, and asked to see the newspaper. After the TSA agent scrutinized the cover of the newspaper and showed it to another security official, Chesler was ordered to open her luggage, which the two agents then proceeded to rifle through.
Something good. I hope that these so-called conservative political pundits, these people on the right, on the far right, I hope they get molested. I'm talking about obviously not sexual molestation, but molested at the airports. I hope they have to undergo double and triple and quadruple the screenings and pat downs. You know why? Because they've been the most silent on this issue, when in fact they should be yelling and screaming from the rooftops to get these people the hell out of the airports. Get them out now. Stop this.
Did you see all the warnings? I heard this on the radio constantly when I was gone about the threat of toothpaste explosives being put in toothpaste containers.
Yeah.
And now I heard, I haven't seen this confirmed on a news report, but I did hear that they were banning all types of liquid substance or any type of substances that come in liquid or tubes, shampoo to toothpaste from flights. And I don't know if they actually banned.
It's ridiculous.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
My wife was saying, what is wrong with these people, and just couldn't understand how they would or why they would continue to, inconvenience the American people. They said even they had a Department of Homeland Security official who was a liaison with the TSA say that actual scannings can detect the type of explosive material that would be put in toothpaste containers in the scanners or X-ray machines. It's a much brighter substance, apparently. But I don't know if it's
what's that glowing green gook?
Yeah.
That's to make my teeth whiter.
Well, if that's the truth, that's why I didn't understand why they would, say you couldn't bring toothpaste on a flight anymore. Anyway, we know the TSA is out of control, and we know that it is just going to continue to get worse until the citizens stand up and make it go away.
Just so you know, Joe, and while you're gone, folks, I do want to say this. We do have some things pending with the printer, the silk screener for T-shirts that do take a swipe at the TSA. I haven't seen the artwork return yet. In fact, I was supposed to get it today, and I didn't see it come in. So anytime I fly anywhere.
This is never.
No, so that's not going to happen.
All right. This from RT. Worst job recovery in history. U.S. economy falls below expectations for the second month. The U.S. economy fell below expectations for the second consecutive month, with January adding only 118,000 new jobs, according to the latest data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The numbers released on Friday were an improvement over the 75,000 jobs in December that were added, but they still landed well short of 178,000 jobs economists were expecting. January's jobs gain fell below 2013 average monthly job growth, which came in at 194,000. Despite the economy's disappointing numbers, the Associated Press reported that more people started looking for work in January. Since some of these people were able to find jobs, the unemployment rate trickled down to a 6.6%, to its lowest since October 2008. Now, I was just floored when I read this, not because I don't understand how they count the jobless numbers, not because of it's the lowest since 2008 at 6% or 6.6%. I'm just shocked that people still believe. I mean, a third of the country isn't working. I saw
the entire country isn't working, but a third of the people in it aren't working. That's for sure.
There was a CBO report that said over 2 million people would rather quit their jobs for Obamacare because it was too expensive to work, and which didn't make sense to me. Did you see that report? That CBO report?
No, I didn't. I've seen references to the CBO report. I have not seen the CBO report itself. And you know, just to back up about Obamacare, you made that reference.
Yeah,
folks, you wait. Just you haven't seen anything yet. My own insurance company, for my wife and I, they're not sure if they're going to be able to. And I said this before, they were going to cancel us on the 31st of December. So I hurried up and got some stuff that I needed to get done, and now they've extended it until mid-June, tentatively. They don't even know. And I talked to my doctor's office. I've talked to, but I also talked with, and I don't know why this would be, but my mother-in-law's got some real serious health issues, and with the hospital and some other with some step-down units, trying to get it approved. And what we're seeing right now, this is real-world stuff. Now, this is not a drill. This is not supposition. This Affordable Care Act is creating a lot of problems. But one thing I want to point out, and I'm trying to track this down, folks. If you've gone into any Walmarts, you know where they have the stands for the taxes. Occasionally, in a lot of Walmarts, apparently they've got. I never paid attention. Where they do your taxes for you. I guess it might be on the outer perimeter of the store. There's a huge sign, and it was I don't know if it's an H&R Block stand or what, but a huge sign that said refunds this year might be delayed due to provisions of the Affordable Care Act.
There was some delays last year. They were sending out letters when people did their returns. You know, you go to H&R Block and a few of these different places that offer, you know, instant returns or very speedy returns. The people that were doing the speedy returns were getting letters saying, you know, instead of the 3 or 4 days that they were supposed to wait for their check, they were getting letters from the IRS saying that they had to wait 2 weeks, and then they would get another letter in 2 weeks saying they had to wait another 2 weeks last year.
But so, what's the reason for this? Is my concern. What's the core reason, the actual reason for this?
Right. They have, 7 to 8 months out of the year to print enough money and checks to be able to send them out. Maybe it's irritation. Maybe it's because they can. Maybe they think they can. I mean, yeah, Ricky in chat says we're out of money. Yes, but they are not out of the ability to create, you know, that fiat currency. So maybe just to hinder those people. I mean, look what the IRS did with Obama in targeting small businesses, conservatives, and people that didn't agree with him. Maybe it's just for the people that they know didn't vote for him. I mean, there could be a lot of reasons behind that.
Anything more today, I wouldn't put it past them. But go ahead. You were digging for the CBO report. I think when I interrupted
you. First attacks based on CBO report on Obamacare and workers. How many workers will have to lose their jobs? Voiceover of an attack ad against Senator Kay Hagan, Democratic of North Carolina, by the campaign Senate hopeful Thom Tillis, North Carolina Speaker of the House. It goes on to say the CBO report on the impact of the Affordable Care Act was released on Tuesday, and already we had the first attack ads. The Congressional Budget Office report on the ACA showed, and after being fact-checked, that it says that Obamacare would reduce the number of hours worked by the equivalent of 5 million full-time workers by 2025. That means workers will decide to reduce their hours, not that employers are reducing the number of jobs. That is one take on it. Here we have from CBS, and these are there's a lot of spin on these. We have to go and read this report for ourselves, and I'll put a link in the chat room. But what the CBO report actually says on Obama, it says the pundits started spinning the CBO's report on federal spending, the economy, and Obamacare almost as soon as it was released. It was a win for one side or the other, depending on the pundit. However, the report itself has gotten lost in the fog of opinion, so here's a look at what it says. It says it's not a study of the ACA. Only 30 of the 175 pages, the Budget and Economic Outlook 2014 to 2024, deal with the Affordable Health Care Act. It is, as the title indicates, mostly a forecast of how the government spending and economy are likely to fare over the next decade. But the reports of Obamacare were looked at because of the political impact and significant opinions made on both sides of the issues. It says part of the CBO's analysis has drawn most attention. Its agency revised forecasts concerning the ACA impact on labor markets, specifically one sentence. The reduction in CBO projection of hours worked represents a decline in the number of full-time equivalent workers of about 2 million. So they say that over the next 2017, over the next 3 years, 2 to 2.5 million people will lose their jobs. And some of the spin says lose their jobs. Some of the spin says will, or ask to have a reduction in hours. Some of them will decide not to work because they'd rather be home with their families. Is one of the spins I heard.
Right. But this is what you get when you meddle in when free enterprise and industry. This is incredible, and why the so-called conservative? Where in the hell are the Tea Party people right now on this? Where are the conservatives speaking out on this?
Well,
I'm talking about those people who espouse conservative, pro-Christian, anti-abortion, anti-government meddling, pro-get out of your face, go back home. Hey, we're here and we're going to take over the government because you guys can't run diddly.
Well, some of them are worried about their re-election coming up this year, so they have their plates full. And where the rest of the voices are, that is an excellent question, because as we saw the insurgents in 2010 of all these people who said they were Tea Party people,
everyone pays at the most lip service. It's incredible.
Are they scared of the IRS targeting? Are they scared of the labeling?
You know what? Expect the IRS to target. Expect it, and then when they do, certainly bring it to the public's bring it to the forefront, as we will do. I guarantee you, we will do this.
You're not to yell at me, or if you're going to yell, look somewhere else, so I don't feel bad. All right, but no, seriously, you're right. There needs to be anger. There needs to be outrage. And here is the quickest, best paragraph of this CBO report. Obamacare will push the equivalent of 2 million workers out of the labor market by 2017. And that's according to this Congressional Budget Office report. That from the Washington Times. 2 million workers will be pushed out due to Obamacare of the labor market by 2017. That's the bottom line.
Well, wait a second. I just saw something fly by here. I just don't get it. Jesus saying, "I want you to repent, America." Okay, that's fine. I understand that. Look, I understand we should repent, but in addition to repent, it's like saying, you know what? Okay, geez, I'm sorry for smacking you. Joe, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to start smacking you. Okay, now I should repent for smacking you. But I'm going to still keep smacking you while I'm repenting. Okay, you stop what you're doing for the love of God. You've got to stop.
You use a better example. You keep seeing an old lady getting beat up on the street the same time every day, and you don't do anything about it. And you come in the house and you repent for not doing something about it every day. But you continue to not do anything about it.
Right. Okay, I understand that. But don't sit back and don't adhere to the paralysis of prayer. Don't be so heavenly minded. You're no earthly good, because for crying out loud, what earthly good are you if you do nothing but sit on your knees and live your life on your knees and repent, but do nothing to stop the travesties that are taking place? I want to know. Where's your mind at? Whoever wrote that, where is your mind at? What heavenly good or what earthly good are you to the Christian population? I'm out of here.
Well, it's time to call Nathan so you can sit back down. We're going to do that now. And did you take your happy medicine today? Or did you need me to remind you for that when I'm in town?
Oh, man, I wish I had happy medicine.
No, I understand your frustration. I get frustrated like that, too. I just usually keep it off the air anymore because it's something that I've learned, this me myself, it causes me a lot of stress and irritation, and I could start yipping at my wife, and it really does nothing good for me. But for you, I know this is therapeutic, so it's okay.
That's right. I'm all right. I'm just, it's, look, I understand all of this. I'll get that. I'm hearing rings in my head. What's going on here? Oh, here we go. All right.
Yeah, no rings in your head. That's calling our guy.
Hello? Hello?
You okay there, Doug?
No, I'm not, Nathan.
Have you
Glad
been listening, Nathan?
With us.
It's good to grieve. It's good to have passion. You know, when Elijah had the showdown with Ahab and his feminist wife, he had to confront them physically and spiritually. And then he whacked all the prophets of Baal, didn't he? Cut them down with his own sword. So there's room for both. The war, the battle is physical as well as spiritual.
It is, Nathan. Well, it's great. It's great to talk with you, my friend. Thanks for coming in, and just at the right moment too. Thanks for coming in.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for bringing me on. I have been researching a lot since the showdown, the embarrassment, the slaughter, the massacre last Sunday, displayed before the world, that told volumes of information. It was very poetic and profound and symbolic and metaphoric, and there was a huge message in the Super Bowl last Sunday. And I have been applying myself diligently since I called you. Was that Monday when I talked to you, Joe, I believe? Monday morning or afternoon?
Yeah, and, that was Monday.
You know what I was trying to think, if Nathan, if you mean Nathan were actually on air during that conversation, something told me that we were. Were we? Mm-hmm. Or was that off air?
No, that was off air. Nathan was on recently, though.
Yeah, I know.
Last week, I believe, wasn't it?
Right, but I was wondering if that conversation we had about the Super Bowl was on or off air. But
that was off air on Monday, yeah.
Okay, all right, because you had some interesting observations then, so I can't wait to hear what you've got now.
Yeah, after the Super Bowl, there's the human side of us, and Doug, you were displaying the human part of you, and that's something we can't escape that. And I don't think that as Christians we need to feel guilty for having patriotism and passion, because to watch our country fall apart and melt and go by the wayside is a grievous thing, and it needs to make us mad and upset. And in the early days of if we've lived long enough, I'm 51 years old, I grew up when I could go to a Houston Astros game in the Astrodome for $2 and sit there and enjoy myself. And there was no Illuminati stuff in the game. It was just old-fashioned apple pie. Mom packed the lunch and enjoyed the game. And I grew up with my father taking me to a lot of baseball games. That was a good thing back then. It was innocent as well as football. But today, the sporting industry has become glamorous and overpowering, and it's full of a lot of harlotry and commercialism. So now it's been corrupted. But the way it used to be in the old days was not corrupted. So there's a part of me that grew up with the purity, the old-fashioned ways of America, where sports were a noble thing, where when you tried to do your best, it was a good thing because you could celebrate your efforts. Today, if you want to celebrate your efforts, or if you're a student in school and you get an A, you get in trouble, or you're compared with the people that lost and you don't want to hurt their feelings. So we have the outcome-based psychological experiment that has failed today in America. But it's okay to have passion and want to win and want to do our best, because it says in the book of Ecclesiastes, whatever you set your mind to do it with all your might. So, Mr. Doug, I appreciate your passion, because you are watching people not do it with all their might, and that's disappointing. I think that with each decade that is passing by here in America, we are watching. We're actually seeing the evolving of a new generation of children, young adults, college students who no longer know and appreciate what hard work is and effort. They don't know what the Constitution actually says. They're too dumb. I mean, they're stupid now. They've been dumbed down. So when they hear about all the grievances that Obama's doing, it doesn't bother them and affect them. So, Doug, you're from the old school. Hey, brother, I'm with you there. There's a side of me that gets upset when I see this. So, anyway, I just want to give you here. You know, when the time comes, and I do believe the time's going to come, where eventually God's going to say, okay, I've already spanked you. You've been behind the woodshed. You had a chance to think about it. Now I'm going to heal you. That's coming eventually. And when it does, he's going to need leaders to stand up and say, okay, point me, God. What do you want me to do? And these leaders that God's going to raise up are going to have to go and unseat the wicked ones and tell it like it is and face them and confront them. So you're right.
Don't pick me. Don't pick me, Nathan.
You're right that sometimes, as you said that statement, and I understand the context you were using it, and I also understand that there's an other side to that context that, well, but that's the foundation. Without, heavenly minded, we're no earthly good. But we need both parts. So I understand where you're coming from, Doug. So I just want to tell you I'm there with you.
And thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. And yeah, we're relatively close in age. I mean, you've got me by 10 years. Now, seriously, we're relatively close in age, and we remember how it was. And a lot of our listeners, the demographics show that quite a few of our listeners are within the same age group as us. So it's kind of saddens me to see people. Now, I understand, Nathan. I understand that the act of repentance, and people are absolutely right. There must be repentance, but there can't be. It's not an either-or thing to me. It's both. You've got to attempt to right the wrong. Yeah. So I don't want to belabor that point and cut into your time, because I know you've got you've spent, folks. Nathan spent the last 100 hours plus really going through a lot of the occult symbolism, the ritualistic stuff from the Super Bowl, and I erroneously put up on the promo, which I apologize, but still the same thing. Still the same process. So I'm going to cut you loose. Where do you start, Nathan? Where do we start?
Okay, well, let's start at the beginning. Right now, I'm working on a comprehensive analysis of the recent Super Bowl, and I want to say up front that ladies and gentlemen, I do not know everything. Doug and Joe, I know I don't know everything. God uses all of us to put pieces together. We know in part, prophesy in part, so God gives clues to everyone. So what I'm going to present tonight are clues and parts of the puzzle. I understand that there are several other watchmen and messengers and servants of God that have also made their analysis, and you can read about them online. Some of the things that I'm going to share may add to what they have done, or maybe add another layer. I'm not going to say that what they came up with isn't the right way to look at it. It could be represented in several things. The canvas is huge. There's a lot of colors. So I want to preface what I'm about to share tonight with that. Now, I'm going to go very deep tonight, and we're going to examine this Super Bowl not only as a benign sporting event, but as a ritual of multi-dimensional significance. Now, over the last few years, the Super Bowl has evolved into a show that a lot of Americans watch, even non-football fans, because they just want to see the commercials or watch the halftime show. And on the surface, the Super Bowl appeals to the natural part of man. It appeals to sports fans and to many Americans. The Super Bowl is the zenith milestone of competitive events. And when we look at the Super Bowl, it is tallied as the annual measure where the best men, the best teams compete for the prize, the annual glory. And it's the moment where American football athletes can be rendered as legendary champions. Now, we were just speaking, Doug, about applying efforts, succeeding, not quitting, not sitting in the armchair and just doing nothing. The Super Bowl exhibits that, because how many of us can remember the losing teams of all the Super Bowls, or when you go back a few years? We remember the winners, and I guess that's the way we're programmed, but that's just the way it is. So the Super Bowl is a competition where the winner takes all, and the losers go into the sunset, demoralized, and they're frequently forgotten. It's sad for them. There's a lot of tears, frustration, and embarrassment. And in NFL football, there is no societal award for second best. There's not. So you either win or you're forgotten. So for NFL fans, they don't give glory to the Super Bowl teams that lose. So this is the main event. This is part of American culture that likes to make titans out of regular people. And the thing that was frustrating for me, and bringing back to what I mentioned earlier, I grew up with baseball and football, so there's a part of me that appreciates just the competitive sports part of baseball and football. I don't care for all the glamour and all the other stuff, but I just appreciate the old-fashioned sandlot playing football, because I grew up that way. I played in the yard, in the sandlot, in the alley, at school, etc., and a lot of us have. So I believe I'm speaking a language that most people can understand. So because the Super Bowl appeals and we can understand it, the powers that be use the Super Bowl as a pulpit to deliver a message. And in this last Super Bowl, I believe they said it was one of the highest in history, 115 million people. That's 1 out of 3 Americans. That's a lot of people, and that's a huge opportunity to deliver a message. So to not take advantage of that would be crazy. It would be a lost opportunity. So that's why the powers that be do use the halftime show, the commercials, the aftermath, and what goes on during the game to deliver a message. And this is where it gets interesting. The message is usually a sermon that reveals the spiritual condition of America. And over the last few years, we have been watching the sermon of the Super Bowl become darker and darker. Have you noticed that? Since Madonna, the last 4 years, it's gotten weirder and weirder. Before that, it was just, U2 would play, or Paul McCartney, or The Who, et cetera. These people would just play. They were on the stage, they'd play, and they'd leave. But now it's turned into an opera, a story that has theatrics, and it has a tale behind the scenes. So why is that happening is one of the questions I was asking myself. What are we watching right here? And over the last few years, I'm noticing that the Super Bowl halftime show also contains information that have plans that the powers of be are going to apply to the nation. And these plans are revealed in various forms. Some of them are out in the open, some are given to us in occultic symbolism, and some of them are in hidden and cryptic symbolism. So I've often wondered if the symbolism is pre-planned by a person. I wondered, okay, are there a group of people that get into a dark, smoke-filled room and they smoke their cigars, and they're pagans and they're part of sorcery and they're Satanists, Luciferians, Illuminati, etc., and do they sit down and do they make out the map of how they're going to communicate their plan, their devious plan to the world? And do they enjoy displaying their dark parable and their purpose and their symbolism in front of everybody? And I've wondered this. I've wondered, who are these people? Is it on purpose? Are they actual humans that consciously think about it, or does it happen by accident? And I know that there's a lot of opinions out there, and over the last few days, I have really been digging, Doug, to find this answer, and I have uncovered a lot of stuff. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to use the entire program to share everything I have. If I don't, ladies and gentlemen, listeners, you can go to my website, watchmanscry.com. I'm going to be placing a lot of new information. I'm going to also record another audio because there's so much to this thing. There is so much. I've tried to find out all the players, and there are players. In my opinion, I believe that the halftime show designers that are revealing the symbolism are used as puppets by demonic and invisible forces. That's the bottom line. There is a demonic, invisible, spiritual thing, a power. Paul tells us in the Bible that the powers of darkness, and that's who we wrestle against. In the book of Ephesians chapter 2, Paul talks about the sons of disobedience under the control of the prince of the power of the air. So there is an invisible power that influences. And some of the people that are being influenced and have a role in the Super Bowl are doing it knowingly, and some of them are doing it unknowingly. And I want to also qualify that because at times, Doug, how much can people remember before they were with God, when they were in the world? They did things that were bad, but we didn't know that we were doing it, and we look back and we go, wow, I was really a tool. Boy, was I. And we're
I got a problem remembering the 70s, Nathan. I'm sorry. I got a problem remembering the entire decade of the 70s, basically. But I get that. But folks, I mean, look, the 11 or however many children there, I get what you're saying, the 11 children or the children that were there taking part of the ceremony. Obviously, it's chances are they're being used as tools, as puppets. They don't know what they're doing. So they're...
Sorry, he had a sneeze mid-sentence.
Oh, okay. I'm still here.
I'm not exactly certain where that came from, seriously, but this is a weird broadcast, I got to tell you. But you're right, Nathan, and as well too. It's interesting because people will mock what they don't understand, or it'd be just because they don't believe something, they don't believe other people believe it. So you're exactly right. Keep going.
And that's what I'm trying to say, Doug. What I'm trying to say is, for some of the listeners that may be not convinced that there's something in the Super Bowl message because they said it's just silly, we're looking for demons under rocks and we're being chicken littles, typical of those guys, they have to find something dark. Well, what I'm going to present tonight is going to bring an end to that argument. So I just want to say that. And for those of you that are still on the fence, you're not sure, just take this and chew on it and think about it. That's the best I can do. All right, I guess that's fair. So getting back to where I was at, I was saying that the humans that are involved in the mix, some of them have offered outright allegiance to Satan, and some of them are part of the Illuminati. Some of them are Luciferians. Some of them are in the occult. They're part of the dark magic, the esoteric arts. They're pagans, etc. But some of them are not. Some of them are just going through the motions. They're just doing the thing. They're being used as pawns of Satan. And one of the messages that I want to make sure that we can leave this program with is that if we are not committed to God, ladies and gentlemen, you will be used. If you are not outright 100% sold out to God, you're going to be used as a pawn of Satan, plain and simple. And I can reveal this, Ephesians chapter 2. Let me just go ahead and read that verse I brought up a moment ago. Ephesians 2, verse 1. And you, he made alive. So when we're born again, we come to life. Our spirits are reborn. You, he made alive, but you were dead at one time in trespasses and sins. So before you're made alive, you're dead spiritually. Your eyes are glazed over. You can see spiritual truth, but you don't comprehend it. That's the condition we're in before we come to God. The world is in darkness. They do not see the light. Verse 2 says, in which you once walked according to the course of this world. This is talking about everybody. According to the prince of the power of the air. So if we are not God's, we're walking according to Satan's ways, period. And according to the spirit that now works in the sons of disobedience. So the things that we do are walking according to the demonic spirits. So these Super Bowl messages are being conducted by people who aren't used and who are not committed to God. Therefore, they're marionettes. That's the bottom line. Verse 3, among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lusts of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as the others. So, right there, Doug and Joe, that tells the whole thing. If we do not belong to God, we're going to be tools of Satan. So in the Super Bowl program, for those that say, well, if they didn't go into the coven and the dungeon and eat babies and have the sacrifice and then talk about the Super Bowl message, then this wasn't of Satan. No. Even if they didn't do that, the display that they conducted and the symbolism that the whole world saw is beyond argument. Because I'm going to, again, and I keep saying this, I have some notes that I'm going to show Joe and Doug tonight, and all the listeners are going to be able to see these images, so you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, the people that are involved in this thing, who are they? Who are these people that desire to give the message? When Madonna acted like a pagan witch in front of everybody, did she not know what she was doing? Did those costumes just make themselves? Did whoever wrote the check for the costume, did they know they were writing checks for upside-down crosses and Egyptian artifacts and all these emblems and symbols that were satanic and of the underworld? Did they know that that's where they were building? The people that made the arts, did they know? Or did they consider it just cool? Hey, I have a job, and I'm working for Madonna, so to me, this is cool. I don't see the darkness. It's just theater. That's all it is. It's theatrics. I don't see anything wrong with it. Well, the individuals that all played a role in Madonna's show and Beyonce's show, and I believe, Joe, you have another one, or you mentioned some of the artists that off the air we were talking about. All these artists, and let's talk about the artists for a second, the entertainers, the musicians, all of these people that have become gods in the eyes of the world, and they're worshipped and they're praised and held in high regard. These people did not get there by accident. There is a price that was paid for them to get there. And behind the scenes, off the record, when the microphone is turned off and the recorder's turned off and they're sitting amongst one another, many of them, and I have seen this in written form, I have seen this in documentaries, I have heard it from their own lips, many of them over time have admitted that they gave their souls in one way or another to darkness, to Satan. They sold their souls for rock and roll, as the old-fashioned thing goes. You do not arrive at such a level of high regard in American pop music if you don't do this. It's impossible. Satan is the god of this world. So an allegiance has to be shown to them. So these individuals, they might not say it publicly, or maybe they might say it and they'll be joking about it, or later on they'll say they're joking about it and they didn't really mean anything about it. Whether or not they meant it, they still do it. Now, Joe, I believe we talked off the air, and there's a few sound bites that we wanted to play for the audience. And can we do the one with the Chili Peppers?
Yeah. Well,
the Red Hot Chili Peppers were part of the halftime show, and for some of you that aren't familiar with their music, some of you might, because they've been around a long time, but some of you might not. They've been around, I believe, 20 or 30 years. They've been around a long time. When they went to the 1992 Grammys, one of them said something behind their microphone, and when he said it, it freaked out his grandmother. She became very grieved. She started praying for him like crazy, and then a few years later, he said, "I was only kidding." But, Joe, can we play that?
Yep, I got it right here. Here we go. It's taking just a short time to load. Any second now. Here we go.
Oh, you got to be kidding.
I'd like to, first of all, I'd like to thank Satan. I'd like to thank Louis Armstrong.
Okay, right. The first person speaking like Elmer Fudd was Flea, the bass player, and then the vocalist said, "I'd like to thank Satan for this award," and the crowd went crazy. Mm-hmm. So they went crazy, Joe.
And Nathan, I didn't tell you about this, but I got I have two more. But this is Lady Gaga on the Jimmy Kimmel show from last year, I believe. Gaga, and we have one of Katy Perry when a woman asks, how does an aspiring singer get success? She says, "I sold my soul to the devil."
So what are all these people worship or devil worshippers? Is this it?
I mean, this
Nathan?
is something I put together just before the last 20 minutes of the show. There's hundreds and hundreds of more examples of people in positions of power saying the same thing.
So the question... go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nathan.
I was going to say the question must be asked. Okay, they're doing it in jest, they're doing it in fun. We were just kidding. You know, when I grew up in the 70s, I remember a lot of the hard rock bands, they loved to put satanic symbols on their album covers. And we remember those guys, Ronnie James Dio, Judas Priest, Kiss, AC/DC, et cetera, but then we can also look at their lives and see what happened to a lot of them in the aftermath of living for Satan. So these individuals, these artists who have become gods in their category and who are worshipped, and for the listeners who dismiss the things they say, the Bible says the mouth speaks from the abundance of the heart. So the heart reveals what's inside. And that's one of the key things that I want to make as a foundational part of what we're going to share tonight. We're going to talk about Bruno Mars, and we're going to talk about the Chili Peppers. I'm going to share something that God just showed me last night. He gave me a dream about them. I saw them on stage last night, had a dream about them, and I'm going to share that tonight. But these individuals have all given something in exchange for being a cleric for Satan. And the instrument that they use is a musical instrument. Their voices or a musical instrument is used so that Satan can continue to be the god of this world, so he can continue the hypnotic trance he has this world in to keep people away from God. Now, for those that are aware, Satan, before he fell from heaven, used to be the choir director in heaven, and when God created Lucifer, Satan, he actually had instruments attached to his body. Are you familiar with those verses, Joe or Doug, where it talks about the pipes that are a part of his body and
no.
all of the instruments that are... No. Was that a yes or a no, Doug? I didn't hear that.
No, negative, Nathan. No.
Oh, okay. Satan was the choir leader of heaven. He understands music. He knows music. And that's why when he fell, he took the ability of music with him down to the earth so that he can be used to deceive people and to keep people from God. During the break, I'm going to find that verse right now. I'm in the middle of a thought, but I'm going to find that verse, and on the other side, I'll read it about how Satan has all these instruments attached to him. So Satan's gift is music. So he is able to use his gift to keep the world at bay, keep the world deceived. And how interesting is it that when we see all these Super Bowl halftime shows or Olympic ceremonies or Tony Awards or Grammy Awards, music is the tool that is used on the stage as the sermon and the message, and musicians are the clerics. So that's one thing that needs to be made very important. Ladies and gentlemen, music will destroy you, bring you down. It'll keep you away from God if you allow it to. How many parents grieve that their children are listening to the wrong type of music, and that music influences them to do crazy things? We see and hear some of the diaries of people who did bad things, school shooters, people who go on murder, killing sprees, people who suicide. A lot of times music's involved, and they talk about it in their remaining notes or their diaries or their Facebook page. So music's very important. So the Super Bowl halftime show uses music to continue this effort to keep the world at bay. I see that we're at the top of the hour. Doug, I'll stop and let you...
Yeah, we are. And folks, definitely go to watchmanscry.com. Where did I put that?
Watchmanscry.com. And
right
at the, let me hit back here. Right at the top right of the page is the February 7th article for the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, which it's called The Hidden Super Bowl Illuminati Message. Click read. It's right under the date of February 7th, and you will get the article with all of the pictures and things that we're going to go through tonight with our guest, Nathan Leal. That's watchmanscry.com. And we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be back after these short messages and start breaking down what was shown in the Super Bowl halftime show, both overtly and really subvert or subliminally at the same time as things were happening so fast. It couldn't even be seen all at once. You had to go back and put it in slow motion. Anyway, folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Friday, February 7th, 2014, with a very special guest, Nathan Leal. We'll be right back after these short messages. Stay with us.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's canadafreepress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at canadafreepress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Number 2 of the Friday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report with our very special guest, Nathan Leal. His website, watchmanscry.com. Go there and check out the latest article, The Hidden Super Bowl Illuminati Message, for the program to go through the pictures and break down the Super Bowl as Nathan sees it and as he broke it down. This is his site and his article, which he spent a lot of time putting together and reading through it during the break here. It looks fantastic. I can't wait to hear the explanation. So let's get right into it, Mr. Leal. Where do you want to pick up from?
Well, I want to pick up with what I was sharing in the previous hour about the role that Lucifer, Satan, the fallen one, he is an entity. He's a real individual. He's a created being. He was an angel who at one time was on God's side, but he fell. I know there's people out there who mock this thought. They say Lucifer's an evil power. It's the bad that happens in the world. He's not really a person. He's just bad luck. And ladies and gentlemen, if you happen to believe that, you're deceived, because Lucifer is a created being. He's an angel of light, but he can deceive, and he has a lot of people deceives, and he is populating hell with most of them that he deceives, the ones that aren't rescued by God. In Ezekiel chapter 28, those of you that are following along, if you have never heard this, and some of you that may argue that music is evil or can be used by evil forces, etc., this is going to explain it all. Ezekiel 28 talks about another description of Satan. It offers a glimpse of him before he fell. And in verse 11, Ezekiel 28:11, moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation for the king of Tyre, and say to him, Thus says the Lord, the king of Tyre, is talking about Lucifer, you were the seal of perfection. You were full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. See, God created Lucifer very beautiful. You were in Eden, the garden of God. And now it's going to explain actually how he's made, some of the beautiful things God created on his body. Every precious stone was your covering, the sardius, the topaz, the diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, turquoise, emerald, with gold. The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared for you on the day you were created. Now, right there, a timbrel is a tambourine, percussion instrument. Pipes are the wind instruments. Satan was the worship leader of heaven. Verse 14, you were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of fiery stones. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created until iniquity was found in you. So this is a glimpse of Satan, ladies and gentlemen. Satan understands music. He understands the power of music. God created us in three parts. We are in the image of God. We're spirit, soul, and body. In Hollywood, sometimes they'll say spirit, or they'll say body, soul, and spirit. They say it backwards, and they concentrate on the body and the flesh. But as created beings who are made in the image of God, our spirits are supposed to get the most nourishment from our existence. And the only way to get that is through worshiping God with a relationship with Jesus, by being born again, reading our Bibles, worshiping Him, and using music to draw us near to God. Music was invented to draw us into the presence of God. That's what it's for. So for those individuals out there that may be struggling in their walk with God, and you're listening to a lot of dark music or this satanic music or music that you might claim doesn't have an effect on you, if it's not nourishing your spirit and if it's not encouraging you to worship God, to actually lift your hands and worship God as David tells us in the Psalms and surrender to Him, then your spirit is not being nourished and revitalized. So a Christian that does not worship God will be empty. Their vessel will have no oil of gladness in it. The living water of God will not be in there. So that's why it's important to have a regular regiment of worship to God. Now, how interesting is it, Joe and Doug? I'm sure you've been to concerts in the past. I grew up as a stoner in the 70s. God pulled me out of that. I got saved coming out of that all through high school. I know that life, that lifestyle. I know it all. I know the bands, all that during the 70s, and God saved me from that. But I remember going to concerts before I was a Christian, and you could walk up to the foot of the stage, and there's the guy doing the lead guitar solo, and you look around, and everyone's doing the same thing. And today, people still do the same thing. During the Super Bowl, they did the same thing. And what is that, Nathan? They stand at the foot of the stage, and they lift their hands toward the rock star. Joe and Doug, you familiar with that pose? Did you ever do that? Are you guilty of it? Have you seen it?
I've never done it. I've been there. I've seen it. Yeah, way back when. Yeah.
If you see glimpses of the Super Bowl with Bruno Mars, I slow motioned it. I have still shots of it. All those girls lifting their hands, and they don't have iPhones in their hands. Some of them did, but the majority are just lifting their hands. And you know, if you were to ask them, "What are you why are you lifting your hands? Are you worshiping Bruno?" They would say, "No, that's you know what? I don't know why I'm doing it." And most people don't. But music does that. It gets that response from us as humans. And God created music so that we could worship something. So worship to God is very important, but if we're not having that as a part of our life, it's going to show in our life. It's going to show in our actions. It's going to show in the way we behave as Christians. It's going to show in our victory, in the struggles we're having, in the constant, continual stumblings that we're doing. Music's important, ladies and gentlemen, so please remember that. Now, the Super Bowl message uses music, and Satan was the worship leader, so he knows the power of music. Doug and Joe, remember when we talked about the Olympic ceremony a long time ago? And
yep.
How interesting was it that during the Olympic ceremony, they were blatant in their pagan symbolism. It was just right in your face. The witchcraft, the demonic, all the things they were doing. But at the same time, pretty music was playing in the background, so most people were disarmed. Their vigilance was totally thrown out the window. Music does that. It takes away our vigilance. It has a way of taking away our ability or desire to want to stay on guard and watch and prevent these things from prevent us from having open doors and windows in our mind and in our souls. Music does that. It disarms us. So the Super Bowl message uses music. And the people that are behind this thing, they understand part of this. I'm sure they do, or maybe they don't, but they understand the results. They know that after the show, people come up to them and they say, "Wow, that was a great show." And what are we hearing about Bruno Mars right now? Greatest show. It was great. We didn't think he'd be able to pull it off, but that was one of the greatest Super Bowl shows. He was James Brown relived. He's so talented. He did the Michael Jackson moves and the James Brown moves. He's a great dancer, and he's a great entertainer, and everyone's happy. Well, if we dissect the actual portions of the songs, the words of the songs, Mom and Dad, for those of you that thought Bruno Mars was cool, if he was just reciting the words in his songs to your little girl, you would take out your shotgun and no one would hear about this person again. If he had your daughter in a car and he was telling her these things. Or you would tell your daughter, "I never want you to see that guy again," if he told her the words that he said in his songs. So how interesting is that? You can take words that are profane and full of infidelity and full of sexual promiscuity, but if you add a tune to them and have cool music, then they suddenly become harmless. That's absurd.
Nathan, I want to jump in here and add this, something that a friend of mine showed me. It's what the cartels do when they have people that they want, taken out here in the States. They'll make like children's music CDs. It'll sound nice and it'll sound very harmless, but the lyrics will be in obviously a different language, and they'll give the information of who and what they want done to these people in these lyrics of these children's songs. So they'll ship a box of CDs up to the United States, that nobody thinks twice about them. And inside these CDs and these lyrics to children's songs are instructions.
That's very interesting. The spy network using music, and that's actually the spy network of the underworld, using music to corrupt the youth and all the continual generations that come and go here in our world now and in our country. I want to, before we start looking at those images, and I'm probably pretty sure some people are already glancing at them, and you're forming inner dialogue and thoughts and saying, interesting, wow, I didn't think of that, et cetera. Before we go into the images that are on my website, I want to share, and I didn't get this far, and I plan to continue this research. It's going to be in several parts. I'm going to have a lot more images, but I want to share who's behind these programs, because as I do, I think it's going to form a picture that it's not as random as some people might think. Now, when we tally all of the players and when we tally the continual paganism and witchcraft and darkness that we are watching in the entertainment media and on TV, we can summarize the method that they're using, and we can summarize the programs they're using to do this. The annual Grammys, that one's a given. We're starting to see a pattern there. The Olympic opening and closing ceremonies, that's a pattern there. The Academy Awards, the Tony Awards, and the Super Bowl halftime show. Now, keep those things in mind, Doug and Joe, because when I was researching, I was wondering who's behind all this stuff. And this is what I found out, and this part I find amazing. If you're taking notes, write these names down, because you can Google these names, and they actually have websites of the projects they have worked on. But the Super Bowl halftime show is now done in-house by the NFL, and that started after the fiasco with Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson in 2003. You remember that, when he peeled off part of her top and exposed her?
Yeah, the wardrobe malfunction.
Right. Okay, that was in 2003. After that, the NFL said, nope, we're going to do it in-house. We want tight control over the halftime show because we can't have that. Okay, after that happened, they hired a lady who before that was in charge of NFL films. Her name is Sarah Moll, M-O-L-L, and she became the person in charge of the halftime show. And then the NFL came up with an in-house department that is in charge of the halftime show, and it's called Touchdown Entertainment. So she's over Touchdown Entertainment. And then they use subcontractors and designers that are found in Hollywood and in England, interestingly enough, who also are hired to help them with the halftime show. Now, this is what I found interesting. Doug, we're about to label ourselves on how old we are. Do you remember Don Kirshner's rock concert in the 70s or the TV show?
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do, Nathan. Yes, sir.
Okay. That show would come on, and we'd be all excited. Who's going to be on tonight? And they had those old bands, the hair bands, the big hair bands, and all those guys would be on there.
Sure.
Well, Don Kirshner was also a promoter, and he was responsible for helping a lot of the bands back then achieve their fame. Well, he's now retired. Actually, he's dead now. He's no longer alive. But his son, Ricky Kirshner, that's his name, Kirshner, is a talented individual because Ricky Kirshner happens to be an artist and a sculptor and a painter and Ricky Kirshner is now a promoter, and he has been very involved in doing and building the sets for TV shows, and that's how he got his start. And he probably was involved with his father. He learned it from the ground up. He cut his teeth on all the sets from the concerts. Well, he started his own company, And since 1992, now get this, Doug, this is interesting. His son, Ricky Kirshner, since 1992, has built the sets for all of the Democratic conventions since 92. So that's 22 years. The ones that we see on TV with the balloons and, the lights and all that stuff, he builds the sets. Okay. Over the last few years, he has also built the sets for whoever the Democratic winner is, he has built the sets for them. Do you remember the Greek temple of the gods that was built at Invesco Field in Denver when Obama announced his candidacy in 08?
Oh, yeah.
You remember
that? Yep.
Greek temple?
Absolutely. Yep.
That's Ricky Kirshner. Same guy. Okay. He also was involved in the in the Madonna set. Now, in 2000, it was about 4 years ago, so that would be 08. Since 08, Kirshner got recruited by Sarah Moll of Touchdown Entertainment for the NFL, and she brought him in-house, and she said, from now on, you're going to help us do the halftime show. You're our producer. So he started producing the halftime show for the Super Bowl. So Mr. Kirshner did the Greek temple, which is occultic, and he's also doing the halftime show. So the Madonna set, the Beyonce set, the Bruno Mars set, is the same guy that also did the Greek temple set. Now, here's another interesting part of the puzzle. The director of the halftime show, his name is Hamish Hamilton. He's a Brit. He's from Britain. Hamish Hamilton, he's the one that comes up with all the camera angles and plans it all out, what the world's going to see. It's him. Hamish Hamilton was involved in the Bruno Mars concert, and get this, Doug and Joe, he was also the cinematographer and the director for the Olympic opening ceremony. Same guy. So now we have a circle of individuals who have their hand in the same continual theme that we're all seeing. Hamilton also does the Academy Awards, the Tony Awards. Mr. Kirshner is involved in the Tony Awards and a lot of other. You can Google him. He has his design company. If you Google Ricky Kirshner, it'll bring up all the stuff he's done. But he is an insider. So when I was studying who these people were, I asked myself, okay, now Sarah Moll was hired by the NFL to keep it clean. But for some reason, she has no problem with the Satanism and the paganism and the sorcery in the shows. Why? Is she blind? Does she not know? And this person, Ricky Kirshner, he's involved with the Madonna show and this show and Beyonce. Do these things not bother him? Was he invited to that smoke-filled room meeting of the Illuminati, and did they say, okay, this is what we want, make sure you continue it? Well, I was reading the process of coming up with the design for Madonna's halftime show, and it was an interview that Sarah Moll gave. She was the NFL person, Touchdown Entertainment, and she said that when they were working with Madonna, Ricky Kirshner was there, and a lot of the creative team was there, but Madonna would also come to the meetings, and she would sit there at the table, and she was very specific on what she wanted. She said, I want this, this, this. So that boat from, hell that she had and all those Pharaoh-looking people and that darkness that we saw in her show also came from her. They were her ideas and her creative team. So the artist is also a part of the decision-making. So the same thing goes for Beyonce. So Bruno Mars, when he had when the set design was displayed with what we saw, did he just show up one day and 5 minutes before showtime, and they told him, okay, you're going to be right here, play the drums, and then you're going to get on the stage and do your little dance, beat James Brown for a moment, and then leave the stage. You got so much time to do it. Was he told that, or did he know what he wanted? Well, when you're an up and rising star, perhaps you're groomed at first. And since he has only been an artist for 3 years and he's new at this, perhaps he was influenced, but the people who also are part of the filming and the production team and the design team, they're veterans at this thing. And Ricky Kirshner is a veteran at this. So I would say if you were – I'm sorry?
Nathan, if I can just interject something here. It's interesting. Sarah Moll, her first Super Bowl production was in 2007 at Dolphin Stadium in Miami. And her first production was Prince. of all people. Now, if you know who Prince is, and if you understand what Prince represents or pretends to represent, it is kind of a very interesting backdrop, or gives you some historical context from which to look at everything else. I go ahead, Nathan. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought it was important.
Her commencement project, Mr. Prince. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. By the way, Doug, I remember on Monday I listened to part of your introduction. You started talking about the Super Bowl, and you mentioned that it's 13 minutes long. I took the liberty of measuring how long from the time they said, ladies and gentlemen, Super Bowl halftime show. From that point, the clock started, and when Bruno Mars went fade to black and he left the screen, between those two moments, get this, Joe and Doug, 13 minutes and 13 seconds.
Yeah, no coincidence, or that's purely coincidental, ladies and gentlemen. Please don't. I mean, just it's purely coincidental, really, right?
They got lucky,
13 minutes and 13. Yeah. It just happens that way. And to those who believe otherwise, you're a damn conspiracy theorist.
And I wonder if they had a line in Vegas as to how long it would go either way. Because usually they do every kind of bet during the Super Bowl. That'd be something to check out. I'll look into.
Here's another interesting food for thought. If you were watching the beginning of the halftime show, there were giant hands that appeared out of the sky, and they did some things to the city, the Brooklyn Bridge. They tuned the Brooklyn Bridge and the Guggenheim, and played drums and bongos on it, and spun one of the intersections, Columbia Highway, I think it was, or Circle, as a turntable, and then the show started. But before the show started, the giant hand was placed on MetLife Stadium and turned it counterclockwise or clockwise. Did you see that, Joe? Did you see it, Doug, when he did that?
Yeah. The Pepsi hand or whatever that was called. Yeah, exactly.
If you saw the outside of the stadium, there was a giant entrance. There's a big display for Pepsi, 2 giant Pepsi bottles. They were like 30 feet long, and there are several gates to go inside of MetLife Stadium, and Pepsi, because it was the angle that was facing the camera, rented that spot and placed their logo all over that gate, so it's called the Pepsi Gate. And if you are curious, the Pepsi Gate at MetLife Stadium was designed by the Architectural Graphic Arts Design Company. Now get this, you ready, Doug? The name of the company that did the Pepsi Gate is called Pentagram.
Again,
you can Google
pay no
that.
attention to this. Yeah, it happens to be just a company name, Pentagram. And to those of you who believe otherwise, you're conspiracy kooks. Go ahead, Nathan. You're painting this wonderful picture.
Okay. Now, we have watched over and over Illuminati symbolism, and one of the most famous symbols is the pyramid, the triangle. We see that, and so now, for those of us that are awake, we look for it. Where's it going to be this time? Where's the pentagram? We're going to talk about that in a moment, but I want to share why the pentagram is so important to them and who is behind the Illuminati. A little brief background story on the Illuminati. The Illuminati has been around since Babylon. It went through a lot of different renditions and evolutions, but in 1776 there was an individual, Adam Weishaupt, and he's the individual that designed Washington, D.C. You've heard of him. His name's spelled with a W, W-E-I-S-H-A-U-P-T. You've heard of him, right? On May Day,
yep.
The satanic holiday, May Day, May 1st, 1776, he began a new version of the Illuminati, the Bavarian Illuminati. He founded it. It was a new sect. And he called it the Ancient and Illuminated Seers of Bavaria. That sect of the Illuminati, made by him, had a great influence in American history. It had great influence in a lot of the lives of presidents. He knew George Washington, and it's always played a role. We can go back through history and see Adam Weishaupt had a lot of influence in the things that took place in America. And Adam Weishaupt, he came up with a theory, and he called it the law of fives, and he said that he got this from an old sorcery book that John Dee used to read and that Aleister Crowley held in high regard. It was a book on necromancy, and John Dee was the sorcerer. He's the one that Merlin came from the 1500s, So John Dee had this book on sorcery, and Adam Weishaupt read the thing. And because he read it, he said he came up with the law of fives, which were the 5 parts of history. Now, 5 was very important to him because the pentagram, and the pentagram is the pentagram star with a circle around it, the pentagram has 5 points. And if you were to make a star with your pen, you have the shape of the pentagon inside the pentagram. We're used to doing that as grade school kids. We played with that, the pentagram. The pentagram has 5 sides to it. So 5 points, 5 sides. 5 is very important to him. He came up with the law of fives, and the original members of the Bavarian Illuminati had 5 members, 5 people, and one of them was a Rothschild. So for those people who might say you guys are looking for a demon under every rock, the Rothschilds have been involved in money laundering and money control and bank control throughout history. We could, Doug, how many programs could we do on this one, right? That one.
Oh, yeah. Let me stop you here, too, because you mentioned something that's near and dear to my heart, and this is something that, Nathan, you point this out. In fact, it's on your website, watchmandscry.com. Ladies and gentlemen, visit watchmandscry.com. But you mentioned John Dee, and it's interesting because John Dee, folks, listen to this, okay? John Dee signed his letters, name, whatever, with 2 zeros or 2 circles and a 7, 007 in Her Majesty's service. The 7 having the elongated, or having an elongated top part. And if you look at Sir Francis Bacon, John Dee, if you search that, the original 007, think of 2-ball cane. And I know, Nathan, you talk about that as well, going back in time, and the this has a lot of significance. Even just folks think about that in the context of Hollywood, as well as the British, as well as what Nathan's talking about. Go ahead. I didn't mean to get you off track.
Oh, that's fine, but thanks for bringing that up because I'm going to mention something in a second. Tubal Cain's logo is a phallic symbol, and we're all grown-ups here, so let me just say what it is. It's the penis with the 2 testicles, and they use 2 little golf balls with a golf club the golf club is a 7, and then you have 2 golf balls next to it. And members of the Illuminati and Masons, that's actually one of their secret welcoming gestures that they make to each other, and the words they speak to have open entrance into their membership, who's Tubal Cain, and that's one of the questions they ask to each other. So the 2 balls, the
what kind of grip would that be, Nathan? What kind of grip would that be? Yeah, really.
But it's 2 circles and a 7, and they use the art of misdirection to say it's just we're golfers, and the little pin that they wear on them looks like 2 little balls with a golf club. That's really a 7, and they use misdirection and they say what it's not. But keep that in mind: the 2 little balls and then the 7, because I'm going to bring that up in a moment. So anyway, getting back to Mr. Adam Weishaupt. 5 was very important to him. He had the law of fives, and according to him, he believed that history went through 5 different stages, and we can look at history and dissect history, and we can isolate where we are in history by appointing one of those 5 stages to where we are. The 5 stages were the following. Number 1, chaos, and in chaos that means all societies the dust is settling, but chaos is going on, and there's just massive destruction. But it's starting to settle, and society is finally starting to, the flames are being put out, the embers are being put out, the water's thrown on the fires. After the chaos, then comes the order, and we've heard order out of chaos. So that brings us to level 2. Level 2, however, order never really totally happens for these people because they don't believe it can for some reason, but their order, their level 2 is called discord. So it goes from chaos to discord. Order is their discord. And the reason they call it discord is because in order to have order, now get this, Doug, in order to have order, you have to have 2 classes of people. The people need to be controlled. So you have to have the ruling governing class and the submissive servile slave class, the little people who do whatever the elite tell them to do. And how interesting is it that the Hunger Games are painting that exact picture right now, that movie? The Hunger Games is very symbolic of where we are. and what's coming eventually. So level 1 is chaos. Level 2 is discord. So you have these two classes of people. And then in level 3, we have confusion, or that's what he said we have. And when confusion comes, then the people in the lower class start noticing that they're in the lower class, but they don't know what to do about it. They just stay confused. They attempt to stop it, but they don't know how, because the ruling class always steps on them and stifles them. And how do they do it? Well, by level 4, which is bureaucracy. And bureaucracy happens because the superior men are held in restraint by the inferior men. In other words, the elite are the inferiors, but they have their foot on the necks of the slaves. And in bureaucracy, you have a lot of paperwork. You have a lot of laws. You have a lot of suffocating legislation and mandates people no longer remember. So that's the next phase. And then finally, stage 5. Now keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. Number 5, according to the Illuminati, is the aftermath, the transition that takes the society into chaos. And when this happens, the people are at the end of the rope, and then the explosion happens, and then you have war and burning and flames. So stage 5 is the flames, and to them, before you can get to the order, you need to have the flames and the aftermath. So it's very important. Now, since the Illuminati believes in this stuff, 5 is important. You have 5 points of the pentagram, which is the satanic Baphomet, the goat's head. You have the 5 sides of the pentagon, which is inside the pentagram. And they have the 5 laws. You have the 5 originating members of the Illuminati. 5 is important to them. And if we can go back to March 20th of 2003, what happened on March 20th? Well, very early in the morning, the air raid sirens were turned on in Iraq, and that's when we invaded Iraq. George Bush started the Iraq War March 20th. Now, get this. The war started at 5:50 in the morning. So
again, it's just coincidence. You know, let me stop you there, because I do have a question, okay, because you're talking about pentagrams and the triangles and even the star shape. What does the Star of David have to do with this? Is there any relationship to the Star of David, or is this a perversion of that Star of David figure symbol thing? This is a can of worms, Doug, but if you go into the ether, which I do not like doing, when I'm doing my research, I have to, though, and I will often go to Barnes & Noble's because I do not want to buy the books of satanic symbolism and pagan symbolism, but to study their symbolism, because I want to know. I don't want it in my house, but when I was doing the Olympic ceremony, I went there a lot. Or you can briefly go online, and there's websites that have pagan symbolism. The hexagram is used to conjure and invoke and summon evil spirits, and the hexagram is made by the pyramid shape, the triangle, and then you take one that's upside down and put it right over it, and you end up with the Star of David. So the hexagram is used. I'm sorry. It's a hexagram. Sorry. I went from a pentagram to a hexagram. I misspoke. I'm sorry about that.
But anyway, that's a can of worms, because I know some people will say I take issue with that. That's holy, etc. And I don't want to digress from the show.
Okay, yeah.
But
that's for another time, and that's my fault. I don't know. Stick a fork in me, man. I'm telling you, it's a bad night for me. Go ahead, Nathan. I got somebody asking me, send me an email. You're at number 5. Pardon me, folks. 3 and 4. Can you just hit those real quickly? What those were? 3 and 4. Just real quick.
3 was confusion.
3 and 4 was
bureaucracy.
Gotcha. And 5. Go ahead.
Is aftermath.
Go ahead.
5 is the aftermath.
All right. And folks, forgive me. I'm off tonight. All right.
Okay, ready? Okay. Now, I want to bring to your observation a shape that some people may wonder, why is that bad? Why do people say it's satanic? And again, Joe and Doug, many times in our lives, we do things that we don't know what we're doing. We have no clue. It's innocent. It's through ignorance. But to some people in the underworld and to the pagans and the New Agers, they mean something to them. If you take the shape of the pentagram, if you make a star, in other words, on a piece of paper, which we all do, we have the muscle memory to make a star. It's very simple to do. if you drew a star on a piece of paper and you look at it, you have, and if it's right side up, you have an upside down V, and then you have a small V that connects it. It kind of looks like an arrowhead. And then you have going across an upside down pyramid that makes the rest of it. Can you see that, Joe and Doug? So you have an upside down pyramid.
I had to draw it, Nathan. I actually had to draw it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, you see it? So if you erase the upside down pyramid on a star, you're left with a shape that looks like an arrowhead. It's an upside down V, and then there's a smaller V under it. It looks like a point of an arrow. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's called the chevron. The chevron is used secretly by Satanists, and they will turn it upside down with their fingers, and they do the victory V sign. The Satanists often do that when they're photographed or when they want to relay a message. They make the V sign. They make the chevron V sign. That is, the V also represents 5. You know, the Roman numeral 5 is a V. So the chevron is very important to the occult. And if you make note of that shape, the chevron, without the upside down triangle, doesn't it look like, you see Star Trek in there? The arrowhead shape?
I never was a Star Trek guy.
No, I never was either.
Okay. Anyway, that the Star Trek symbol is that symbol right there.
Oh, yeah, okay. I know what you're talking about. Okay, yeah. And folks, I'd urge you, if you grab a piece of paper and a pencil and then go ahead and draw that star, you know, when you were kids, and make the erasures. And you're right, it's a chevron, which I came across something about that here today in my research, but also, that's right, it's that Star Trek logo thing.
Okay. And I'm not going to beat up on Star Trek right now. I'm just bringing something, making an observation. The Satanists love the chevron because it's part of their pentagram. And the Baphomet part of the pentagram is when you flip the star upside down and have a goat head and you put a ring around it, then it's used to conjure and summon, and it's very important to them. And we all know the upside-down pentagram, the Baphomet. And then you can really see the V. So the V sign, the victory sign, is used by people who do not know better, and it turned into a hippie symbol in the 60s, and it became V for victory or peace, man. Right, Doug? So a lot of us we used it through ignorance, and to the person that says, well, to the Satanist, it might be the V for number 5, but to me it's just a peace sign. And I don't want to argue that point. I really don't. But I'm just bringing to your attention what they value and what is significant to them. Now, but at the same time, I don't want to dismiss it either. So the pagans use symbols. The symbols for pagans are very, very important. Another symbol that's very important for pagans, when witches do their summoning, they'll draw a circle around them on the ground, and if they're inside their ring, their circle, they feel that they're protected, and their spell and their incantation will have more power, because the circle represents the feminine spirits and spiritual Mother Earth. It's a sacred space. The boundaries of the ring that are around them are very powerful to the pagan, and they somehow believe that if they're inside the ring, nothing can hurt them. So bad spirits can't hurt them. Now, how interesting is it? They like the ring, and so do the Tubal-Cain people. They like that ring, Doug. Okay, just make note of that, because I'm going to start talking about the symbology in the Super Bowl program. Now, when the Super Bowl started, it began with the giant hands. Did you see those, that halftime show, giant hands, Doug?
Oh yeah, yep. Yeah, not in real time, but the replay. Yep. The giant hand that turned the stadium or reached into the stadium, or reached down to touch the stadium, right? Yeah. Exactly.
The giant hands were created by an advertising company called Mechanism. I didn't have a chance to research them, but their name is spelled Mekanism. Mechanism Creative Advertising did the giant hands, and the giant hands to them might have been benign. Hey, let's do giant hands to just show how cool Pepsi is. Pepsi's in control. But when we look behind the layers of the giant hands and we actually start dissecting them, it forms an interesting picture, because the first thing that the giant hands did, and in my opinion, Doug and Joe, there was hidden behind the scenes, under the layer symbolism of everything that we saw in here. The giant hands represented the powers that be, the elite. It represented the powers of darkness. It represented Satan. It represented all of those elements of the underworld that are actually controlling this world. And it started out with the hands plucking on the Brooklyn Bridge, and the left hand started spinning one of the giant lights or screws on the top of the Brooklyn Bridge, and as it did it, the Brooklyn Bridge came in tune as it plucked it. And what that showed right there was we're the ones that are in control of the tuning. The tuning fork is in our control. We tell you the pitch to listen to. We're in control of what you hear. And if you were to remember the Olympic ceremony, at the very end of the ceremony, by the way, there was parts 7 and 8 that I never finished, and that had to do with the warlock and the children. I don't know, maybe I'll finish it sometime in the future, but the darkness was so gross, after a while I just had to stop, Doug, if you can imagine. So that's why I stopped and I didn't finish. But at the end of the Olympic ceremony, the Pink Floyd played a song about our life being in tune, and that was one of the final things before they lit the flame, being in tune. And harmonically, the New Agers place being in tune very important. The chakras of our inner spirit need to be, quote-unquote, in tune. And that's what the giant hands were doing. They were tuning the Brooklyn Bridge, meaning that the powers of darkness have everything in tune. Also, the other hidden message was they're in charge of transportation because the cars went across, and the bridge represents a portal. It represents a gate to get from one side to the other. We've talked about this over and over, the gates and portals. How interesting is it? The Pepsi, quote-unquote, gate at MetLife Stadium was done by Pentagram, so we have gates mentioned again. And we continue to see these symbolic phrases and words over and over. It's not an accident, Joe and Doug. It's not. So after the giant hand tuned the Brooklyn Bridge, it started playing the trumpet on a factory. And the fingers started pushing down on some chimney, on smokestacks, and the bridge was in front of the smokestacks, and it started playing. And how interesting is it that right now the smokestacks, what does that represent? The factories, the smoke that's being emitted from the factories, and Obama's climate control. Climate control is going to be used as a lie, as a deception, to destroy the economies of the world and to place a thumb and another very, very heavy boot on the neck of capitalism and on the lives of people. Climate control is a lie, and of course we're watching historical cold temperatures and blizzards, etc., but nevertheless, climate control is still being used by Satan to lie and to garnish and garner a lot of new legislation. So I'm switching phones right here. Another battery's going dead. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, and I hate when that happens too. I feel for you. But folks, the important thing here, as we're getting into this, and ladies and gentlemen, if you're tuning in to us late, we're talking with Nathan Leal, watchmanscry.com, watchmanscry.com. It's linked via HomelandSecurityUS.com, our website. It's on the left or right-hand side. You go to his website and check it out on the top right-hand side. He's got the images from the Super Bowl and the step-by-step dissection of what went on. And folks, also, Nathan Leal has got just a ton of information about the Illuminati symbolism, the occult symbolism of the Olympics, and so on. So this is so important. You might think, well, why? In the scheme of things, with the economy falling and everything taking place, everything's going wrong, why are we talking about this? Well, this is the reason why that things are happening. You know, as an investigator, I like to find out what's behind, what the motive is, or what the motive and players, who the players are, what the motive is. I want to know everything, as much as I can find out, and this is what Nathan has very adeptly done. Nathan, were you okay in switching the phones, everybody?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm here.
Okay, all right. Thought I'd give you a little rest there while you could do it. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. And then after we saw the factories, we then saw the giant hand start beating the drums and playing the bongos on the Guggenheim building. And the Guggenheim, what does that represent? entertainment and the culture of America and the liberal culture and the snob culture and all the cultures we can think of, how many movies take place in the Guggenheim? I mean, over and over we continue to see that thing. Well, the giant hands are controlling the drum beats of the culture. The Guggenheim represents the culture, and they're playing the drums. So our culture dances and walks, and the cadence and of the marching of our culture is to the beat of their drum, to the powers and the principalities in the air. They're showing it to us in our face right there. Real interesting. By the way, side note, Doug, the opening ceremonies for the Sochi Olympics happened last night, and I believe they were going to be replayed today. I haven't seen them, but that's going to be interesting to watch, see if there were some more things that were revealed there, so we may be talking about that in the future. Interesting, we're talking about it now, and it's happening in live, real time over in Russia. But continuing on, now, the hands did something real interesting, and I've been scratching my head and wondering what is the hidden message here, if there's one at all. Now, the artists at the design company that made the hidden hands, that were hired to do this, if we were to interview them, Doug, and if we were to ask them, okay, what did you hide in there? What did you mean? They might say, we didn't mean anything. We were just being cool. We thought it would be neat. But as I read in Ephesians chapter 2 in the last hour, when an individual and a culture is not submitted to God, they are the pawns of Satan. So whether or not they knowingly did the message and relayed the message and proclaimed the message and portrayed it, it was still portrayed. So the hands, after they were playing the drums on the Guggenheim, we saw them in front of subway trains or over subway trains. It was in the train yard where all the subways park. Did you see that portion, Joe or Doug? A lot of trains?
Yes. That was kind of a brief cutaway, maybe?
Yeah, it was. And I froze it. I put it in slow motion, and I viewed the parked trains. And there were 21 trains parked all the way across the train yard, and these are subway trains. The first 10, though, were seemed to be concentrated on. The other 11 were kind of in the backdrop, so you didn't really notice them. So there were 10 trains that were right in front of the screen. And the giant hands reached down, and they slid from the left side. They slid the fourth train over in the fourth row that was pretty far back, and they slid it forward. And then they reached across also, and the train in row 9 was far back, and they slid that one forward to symbolize a mixer board when you raise the volume or lower the volumes or the settings of a mixer when you're engineering sound, etc. That's what they were mimicking. However, I'm sorry?
Oh, that's an inside joke, Nathan. Things I'm not allowed to touch here at the studio.
Oh, okay. So here's what I'm wondering, Doug, and this part I don't know, but as you stated, being an investigator, we look at all the segments, all the angles. The CSI person looks at all the angles. They will eliminate the ones that are meaningless, but then the ones that may mean something they leave on the table. So that's what investigative work takes. That's what a sleuth does. You have to examine everything and lay it on the table and be open that there's a possibility that it means something. So when we looked at the rows of the trains, row number 4 and row number 9 were touched by the hands. As I look at those two numbers, they add up to 13, and I ask myself, is there a meaning there, or do you add them together, or do you make a combined number between the two, number 49, or does it represent a date, April 9th, between the trains? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen on April the 9th, or what 13 or 49, but however, 13 is significant to the Illuminati, and so is 49.
Nathan,
so
you've seen a lot with trains, and a lot of what you've seen and disclosed here on this program has come to fruition with, the increase of the train collisions, and even one of the depictions you made of what you saw, you put up into a drawing and then compared it to an actual train collision that looked eerily similar. So the reason that, for the focus on the trains is because of what I would say what you've been shown from the Lord about trains. Exactly.
So that's why I'm just leaving that on the table. April 9th. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. 13 and 49. I don't know. But there you go. We saw it. The whole world saw it. And then after the trains were manipulated by the giant hands, then the Columbus Circle, for those that are familiar with New York, you know, the cars go around. We've seen a lot of movies using that as a set also. The giant hands turn it back and forth like it was a turntable. And below the surface layer, what does that show right there? It shows that we control which direction you go. We can make you go backwards, forward, and while we're doing it, you don't even have a clue, because while they were doing that, while the hand was spinning the taxis backwards and forwards, there was a screenshot of just people standing on an intersection with taxis going by that were just living their life. They had no clue. They were oblivious to what was going on. They had no clue that giant hands were controlling their lives. So after we saw that, then the giant hands touched MetLife Stadium and turned it, and then the halftime show started. So the giant hands I find very profound and symbolic, because just by itself, the word giant, to be mimicked by the powers that be that control us, we know from the research of a lot of your guests in the past, Doug, we know that the Nephilim have played a role in Earth's history in the past, and possibly they're going to play a huge role in the future, the giants. And speaking of giants, I want to segue, if we have enough time, Joe. If we don't, we can do it on the other side. There were several commercials that I also found ominous, and commercial number 3 during the Super Bowl, it was not played during the halftime show. It was just the third commercial, was very ominous because it was a little girl talking about giants, and it was a Maserati commercial. And when she started speaking, the two images that were shown at the very beginning are actually prophetic images that people continue to dream about over and over, and that is tsunamis. How many people have dreamt of the tsunamis, Doug? And the big
I've heard from quite a few. Yeah,
a lot.
I mean, quite a few. Yeah.
And tornadoes.
And that, by the way, is something what I would consider relatively new. Okay, I mean, it's not something that 10 years ago people were talking about. But go ahead.
The commercial started with those two things. Now, again, whoever made this commercial might have been oblivious, but there was symbolism in there, and they didn't even know it. Because right now the Earth is experiencing the tsunami judgment of God, and when we dissect the judgment of God, we can see a lot of different elements, a lot of different players, events, circumstances, and a lot of different things are going to occur in this tsunami judgment, where actually eventually it's going to become a literal thing occurring, an actual tsunami that I do believe is eventually going to culminate in the judgment. Now, Revelation tells us about the mountain, the flaming mountain that's going to land in the ocean. When that thing happens, there's going to be a tsunami worldwide. Until then, there may be other tsunamis that will happen because of other events, and we've heard about some of them. I believe Augusto Perez shared about one in Puerto Rico, and then some other people are speculating that volcano, that landslide might occur on the other side of the Atlantic that would bring a tsunami to the East Coast. We're hearing about tsunamis. So tsunamis are happening in the spiritual realm as well as in the physical realm, and then on top of that, we are watching the judgment of the darkness. I saw several years ago the tornado judgment, and I've spoken about this in the past also, where tornadoes came out of the sky in my prophetic dream, and as they hit the ground, there was loud explosions and the ground shook, and I found myself shaking and trembling in terror, and the Holy Spirit revealed that was God's judgment arriving on planet Earth as well as in the United States. The judgment's been going on now for several years, since 2008. It's really got going, and in the continuing years, it's going to increase in its fervency, in its power, in its seismic strength. We're going to see the judgment of God increase in ways that are going to wow and amaze and shock a lot of people. So that Maserati commercial started out with this image. And, Joe, I believe you downloaded that audio, and I don't know, do we have enough time to play it, or do we do it on the other side of the hour?
No, we have enough time to play it.
And here's what we're going to do, Nathan, because there's so much information. We're just going to play the audio. We're going to take about a minute break and then come back. So go ahead and we can play the audio right now.
All right. Here is the official Maserati Super Bowl commercial of 2014. Gentlemen, our third and final hour of this Friday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report with our very special guest, Nathan Leal from Watchman's Cry. Go to his website, look on the right-hand side of the upper part of the website for the hidden Illuminati messages under February 7th. Click on Read, and that will bring you to the guide for the show tonight, breaking down the Illuminati symbolism during the Super Bowl. Right before the break, we played the Giants commercial, or the Maserati commercial. And Nathan, me and my dad listened to that before the show, but hearing it again, it is just as creepy the second time as it was the first time, talking about giants always being here, hiding in the earth, waiting to attack.
And Nathan, you can't tell me, no one can tell me that that's suitable, or no, whoever did this didn't have a clue. To me, this is intentional. This is in your face. This is overt. This is, hey, we're here, we're proud, and we're coming out. We're coming after you. And to use to exploit children in this manner, and I suspect there were more than one, to me is absolutely unconscionable. Go ahead, Nathan.
All right. Am I there? I was disconnected in the break, and I called back. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. It was blatant. I wrote down the words. It says, the world is full of giants. They have always been here, lumbering in schoolyards, limping through the alleys. They've always been here. We had to learn how to deal with them, how to overcome them. We were small, but fast. We were like the wind appearing out of nowhere, and we know that being clever was more important than being the biggest kid in the neighborhood. And as long as we keep our heads down, as long as we work hard, trust what we feel in our guts, our hearts, then we'll be ready. We will wait until they get sleepy, wait until they're so big they can barely move. That's when we will walk out of the shadows, quietly walk out of the dark, and strike. And then that's when we heard the Maserati. But the screen, this is interesting. The screen then says, we have prepared. And it stays there for a few seconds, and then it says, now we strike. So the word prepare was in a Maserati commercial, and then the thing that I found interesting, okay, we have the word prepare. We have a pattern here. The word prepare and children delivering the message. So when we start looking then at what happened in the halftime show, that's why I don't believe that this was an accident. It defies rationale and reason, in my opinion, but if you can, let's go ahead and look at the images that I have, Joe and Doug. You have them right there in front of you?
Yes, we do. But by the way, for the earlier conversation, you mentioned 5. The Washington Monument is 555 feet tall. 5 is the number of fortress to the Illuminati. I just want to throw that in there as we go back just a bit. Okay, let's go to the images. Got the images here. Folks, go to watchmanscry.com. Click on the link to the Super Bowl, and let's go for it. Go ahead. We got it ready.
Okay. The halftime show was performed by Bruno Mars. Before this happened, I didn't even know who the guy was. I confess, ladies and gentlemen, I guess I'm behind the times, behind the culture. But he's an upcoming star. He's been around about 3 years. So I did some research on him. And when I started researching him, Doug, I found myself gasping because things don't just happen by accident. And when we see that Hamish Hamilton was involved in the first Olympic ceremony, as well as this one, and Mr. Kirshner was involved with a lot of the liberal-type events that we see in Hollywood, as well as this one, I fully believe that they are in control or at least being used as puppets and marionettes by the powers of darkness. Because Bruno Mars, I just want to, let's pause there for a moment. Mr. Bruno Mars comes from Hawaii. That's where he grew up. His father's Puerto Rican and Ashkenazi Jew. His mother was female. She's from Asia. She was from the Philippines. So he's half Filipino Asian, and then Puerto Rican. But none of his roots are from the mainland America. They're from Puerto Rico, and so I started to notice, and I was wondering. I was scratching my head, going, "Okay, who else comes from Hawaii or says they do?" Mr. Obama. hails from Hawaii. So was that just a little small coincidence that has no ramifications?
Oh, wait, it gets better. It gets better because the most active geological area on Earth is Hawaii, 19.5 degrees off the equator. Just to throw that in there with respect to Hawaii. So, go ahead.
Okay. The name Bruno Mars tells a big story, and if you have my article right there, I did the research and found out what Bruno means, and I was able to come up with several meanings for it, but some of the most prominent ones, and you can just Google this if someone doesn't believe what they're reading right here, it means the dark one. Bruno, dark one, or shield or armor. That's what Bruno means, and of course Mars means the god of war. He's a pagan deity. So together we have the dark-skinned god of war who has armor. That's what his name means. Now, we have the dark-skinned god of war from Hawaii. Okay, just keep that on the table, Doug, because I'm going to go somewhere with this. When we examined the Olympic ceremony, and as you can see, I said his persona is meant to portray a message similar to the one we saw in the Olympic ceremony. It's linked to this guy. And I have a picture of Kenneth Branagh, who was in the Olympic ceremony, and he read from Shakespeare's The Tempest during the ceremony. See his photograph there? You remember him?
Yep.
Remember that speech he gave? Okay. He gave a weird speech at the ceremony, and everyone wondered, wow, is that Abraham Lincoln? Who is that guy? And the connection between him, if you heard my Olympic series, I broke down the name of this guy. By the way, Danny Boyle, who directed and who created the Olympic ceremony, told us that this individual is represented. He represents an elite person that lived in the 1800s, who was a steel magnate, very wealthy, and his name is Isambard. Very odd name, Isambard, Isambard, Isambard. Middle name Kingdom, last name Brunel. Isambard Kingdom Brunel has an odd name. The word Isambard means iron that glitters, glittering iron. Kingdom means what it says, kingdom. So we have an iron glittering kingdom, and Brunel means of the earth or something that's brown. So Brunel, brown of the earth. So together we have the glittering iron kingdom that's brown from the earth. And when we look at the end time summary of the last days, and I went into this in my Olympic series, we can see that the end time beast is represented as the iron mixed with clay kingdom. Iron is in there, and so is clay. So we have iron for Isambard and the earth for Brunel, and then in the middle is kingdom. So the name Isambard Kingdom Brunel actually symbolizes below the layers. And Danny Boyle, I don't believe he even knew he was doing this when he designed the Olympic series, the Olympic ceremony. But nevertheless, that's what the name means. His name means the end time beast, translated. So he represents the end time New World Order, rich, elite, all that on the table. The bankers, the ones that want to steal your money, Doug, and your retirement fund, and Joe, want to make life miserable for you and your wife, and ladies and gentlemen, those that want to make life miserable for us, that's the New World Order. Okay, so this guy in the image, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, his last name's Brunel. Now, Bruno Mars is, the name Bruno and Brunel are related because they both mean brown. They both mean dark. So is that a coincidence, Doug, that we have these two individuals whose names are related and they paint a similar picture that has to do with the end times? And also, when we look at Bruno Mars, we see a link to Obama. It's fascinating how this all came together. Now, when the ceremony or the halftime show started, Bruno Mars started singing. Well, actually, before he started singing, the children sang. So, Doug, as you were stating, using children to portray their message of darkness, we saw that in the halftime show. The children started singing as a choir, and they sang, "Every time I close my eyes, I see my name in shining lights. A different city every time. Oh, I swear the world better prepare, prepare, prepare." And to the one that hears those words, they might say, What do you mean? What are you talking about? That word comes from the song Billionaire. And I have the words to billionaire in front of me. I'm going to just read
pretty profane
a few
song.
of them.
I mean, it's not a song for children. It's a pretty profane song.
Right, and I'll use okay. I want to be a billionaire so bad. I want to buy all the things I never had. I want to be on the cover of Forbes magazine smiling next to Oprah and the Queen. This sounds like the dialogue or the monologue, the confession of a person that's power hungry and money hungry. Obviously. They want to see their name in lights. And then the next stanza is what the children sang. Every time I close my eyes, I see my name in shining lights. So whose eyes are closing in this song? Well, it's the rich man, the power-hungry rich guys fantasizing that want to control everything. But here's the deal, Doug. It's not a fantasy. It's not pretend, because he actually is coming, the power-hungry man, and he's arriving right now. And as he arrives, he's going to blaze a trail across this nation. He's going to plow it over and under, and not just America, but the entire world, because it says, I see my name in lights, a different city every night. So he is in motion. He's plowing the ground, city to city, like the giants, stomping, leaping from city to city, plowing it over. And the world better prepare. So we have the destroyer. Those giant hands represented the slaughterer and the destroyer. And we can read in Scripture, in the book of Isaiah and Ezekiel, and in many prophecies, how God is going to allow the destroyer, Satan, and the powers of darkness to be used to judge the world at the end times. So this song is the monologue of the powers that be, the New World Order, and the end-time beast. And may we also add the Antichrist character figure. This is him plowing the world over. And then it continues. Yeah, I would have a show like Oprah, and I would be the host. And every day would be Christmas. And anything on the wish list I would give. I'd probably, like Angelina and Brad Pitt, I'd adopt a bunch of babies. Now, there's some hidden symbolism right there. In other words, the children belong to me. I own all the children, and I'm going to give away everything. So socialism and communism is going to be their modus operandi. They're going to be communists and socialists at heart and fascists. So we also see that declared right here. The song goes on, I would give away a few Mercedes, and here, lady, have this. And last but not least, I would grant someone their last wish, their last dying wish. So there's another hint right there. As people are dying, I'll let them have their wish. What's the wish? It doesn't say. But now we have people dying in this song. It's been a couple of months that I've been single, so you can call me Travie Claus, ho ho. And I guess that's the other person that helps Bruno sing this song. Then it goes on. And this part I find interesting, Doug, because he mentioned some ominous things. It said, I'd probably visit where Katrina hit, and I would do a lot more than FEMA did. And you can't forget about me, because everywhere I go, I have my own theme music. So now, okay, Bruno Mars is talking about one thing, but behind the scenes, when we look at it through the eyes of the New World Order and the end-time beast and the elite, they're going to visit where Katrina hit, and they're going to go further next time. Whatever FEMA did last time, they're going to go further. I'm going to do a lot more than FEMA did. There it is right there. So then the song continues, and it goes on about when they close their eyes, you better prepare, prepare. So the lyrics are about this person who's power hungry, and there's a lot of meaning. But, Doug, I find this disturbing, because when we saw the Super Bowl halftime show, it started out, and I have an image right there. You see the children in silhouettes?
Yep.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
yep.
11. Now, there's 11 shown. I cropped it. There was another child on the left, so there's actually a 12th child. But they operate in the shadows. That's what they're telling us right here. And out of the darkness,
12,
they have
right.
a message for us. So there they are, operating in the shadows, using the children just like they did in the Olympics, and they had the children very dramatic. But as you go on, there's a disturbing image from the ceremony, the maypole, and then under that's that giant warlock, creepy creature forming a circle around the demon. Well, that circle is the Wit's pagan circle, by the way. You see the outer circle with the beds, and then there's an inner circle with the crescent moon, and the warlock is inside the crescent moon. That is a very powerful symbol to pagans and to witchcraft and to sorcery. So the circle is important to them. Now, as we scroll down, there they have the circle again with the crescent moon and their Antichrist baby. You see the giant? Again, giant?
Okay, I'm not seeing that. Okay, here we go. Yes.
It's blue, the blue background.
Right.
Okay, so the giant baby. You remember during the ceremony, it's like, what in the world are you doing? That is creepy.
Yeah.
But it's next to the crescent moon inside the double rings of the pagan symbol. You see the two rings, the crescent moon, Antichrist baby. Now, below that, we have Bruno Mars singing inside the ring. Now, to the designer of the halftime show, did they just come up with this and say, hey, Bruno, we're going to have you sing inside a cool circle? And did Bruno say, okay, whatever, fine, I'll do it? I don't know how they decided this, Doug, but I just know this. The circle and the summoning process and the invocation among pagans and witches is very important to them. Now, we have a double ring right here where Bruno Mars is singing. Under the creepy baby image, Bruno Mars is singing inside the circle.
Right.
You see that?
Right. Yep.
Okay. The two rings, Tubal Cain, 007.
Oh, okay. I get that.
And then he's singing with his microphone, making a 7. So, very subtle.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I never, looking at that image, Nathan, I did not associate that with Tubal Cain. But if you look at that, 2 circles, a 7 or a 7 golf club, whatever, a putter. Go figure.
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting. Now, moving on, as we go down, of course, the circle, Bruno Mars, I believe, also represents Obama. Now, up to this point, Obama has burned America for 5 years going on, 5 and some change. He has a few years left if he stays in power, if he doesn't get impeached. The way it stands, though, he's not being stopped. So Mr. O has his orders that come from above, and Bruno Mars and hailing from Hawaii, representing the rich guy. See, the symbolism goes down a lot of layers. Obama is representative of the New World Order that's destroying the Western culture, and eventually we're going to have flames. That's going to be the end result. So we have Bruno inside the letter O, and, of course, you see Obama's logo. O stands for Obama. Obama is also represented by people in the Internet world as Mr. Zero, so Obama is zero. So keep those two things in mind just as we move forward. So the song Billionaire, in my opinion, Joe and Doug, I believe that it represents all these things I'm mentioning. So why did they say to prepare, though? Why would children be used to prepare? Well, this gets into another area of what I believe are spiritual laws. Now, Satan is allowed to do certain evil things in this planet, and God knows what he's doing. But Satan is on a leash that is decided, the length of the leash for Satan is decided by God depending on the timeline and the historical marker we are, the judgment, God's will, God's sovereignty, etc. He allows Satan to be used, and he'll reel in the leash or he'll give it some slack. So he allows Satan to do things, but Satan is on a leash. That part has to be stressed because that means that God is in final control over this world. He is sovereign. And all of the bad things, the doom, the darkness, etc., that's coming, I am not saying that Satan is the winner in all of this because we know what the final tally is going to be, and we know who's going to win the game at the end. But until then, it's going to be pretty dark, ladies and gentlemen. So being that God is in control, God loves his people. And over in Scripture, God has made it very clear that before he judges his people or a land or a country, he always warns them first. We can find this in 2 Chronicles chapter 36. We can find it in the book of Amos. I don't do anything before telling my secrets to my servants. God also allows his watchmen to see the glimpses and the images that are coming. He shows his messengers, his scribes, his wise men, those that have the eyes to see, he shows it to them by a variety of different means, through parables, through signs, through harbingers, through signs in the heavens. God does this because he loves us, so he wants us to be warned. So since God uses his prophets to warn the world, would it be any different that when he's using the powers of darkness and allowing them to be used as his hammer, that he would also stress to them, you need to also warn the people before you do your evil. Now, to the person that might be a pagan or witch, they'll say, no, it's not the way I heard it. The Illuminati have their own rules, and they do it for a variety of reasons. Well, they're not going to tell you it's because God told them they have to, or the spirits aren't going to admit it, but God is the final authority, and we see that rule in Scripture. He always warns. So, based on that premise, Doug and Joe and listeners, this is why we continue to see the Illuminati and the powers of darkness give us the warnings in our face of things that they're doing. And
let me stop you right there, Nathan. Let me stop you right there. Is it because I have a question about this? You know, are we seeing more blatant warnings because we're getting closer to an event, or is it because we're just waking up? Go ahead.
I believe it's because we're in a new chapter in the timeline. We're in a new segment of man's history. When you look at Revelation 9, it says the angels that were chained up were for that day, that month, that week, that hour. So God has a timeline. And since we're getting into that timeline, I mean, he gave us Revelation 2,000 years ago to warn us. So now we're seeing those things. So I believe what it tells us is that we are getting into that timeline where these things are going to be playing out more and more often before us. And, of course, you being the sleuth, the detective, Doug, you want to know and you want to figure it out. And for some nincompoop reason, some of the knuckleheads out there find fault with wanting to know what time it is and figure it out. That makes no sense to me. We're supposed to know. If you're smart, you're supposed to know. Summer and winter.
Right.
Hey, winter's coming. Get firewood. The pantries are getting better. Buy more food.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people have a problem with common sense.
Well, and I'll just say this too, because I've seen this a lot since the Super Bowl, especially, where people will say all of this, everything you're talking about is such a waste of time. This is all just seeing things where there's nothing. And you know, Nathan, I think it just fits at this moment, because looking at this and seeing it, how you put this together, and folks, watchmanscry.com, click on the upper right link, and you'll see the photographs. I don't understand why people cannot see this symbolism of which you speak, and how you've laid this out perfectly for beyond any preponderance of evidence anyway, meeting that criteria. So go ahead, Nathan.
Okay, so through the mouths of babes, you know, Satan kicks the rocks and goes, oh, shucks, I got to go and do what God says and warn, okay, how are we going to do this, guys? So he sends out his generals and his assistants, and he goes, okay, we got to warn them. But the way we do it is up to us, or we can be clever, et cetera. And I don't know all the behind-the-scenes rules, Doug. I'm the first to admit. However, we are seeing the pattern that they do announce it. They tell us in advance. Even terrorists do it. After they do it, they take credit. Why do they do that? It's because the powers of darkness have rules also. So when we're looking at the children's choir singing, you better prepare. Then we saw the screen behind them that was separated into three parts start to change, and the American flag appeared, and then we saw the lasers turn red over their heads. And as I was looking at this and I saw the flag appear, I rewound it and I said, what are they saying right here? What is it? Well, the one thing that I noticed was there's three screens. The screens are divided. So when the flag appears, it's three flags that are being projected behind them. Do you see that? The United States flag in three parts. So it says in the book of Revelation, Babylon's going to be broken into three parts, divided into three parts. The United States of America, let me just say this outright, and this is the theme we're going to start examining now from here on out. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States of America is going to be divided and broken up through civil war and through coming catastrophe, and it's going to get bad. But right here we have the United States flag in three parts while they're saying, prepare. They sang it three times, and then when they sang it the third time, the words prepared took over the flag. And then the lasers, I mean, Doug, you see the word prepare now?
Oh, yeah.
Those look like missiles, tracers. firing.
Yeah, they do. They do. Above the image. And folks, if you're looking at this, it's I don't know, 1, 2, 3 underneath the Obama, third image underneath the Obama image. Yeah, they do have the appearance of some sort of missiles.
Okay, so I was wondering, is that a coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. Let's keep going. I was keeping an open mind, but I was taking a lot of notes. So as they said prepare, then the screenshot pulled back, and then we saw, you can see them far away, the top where you can see that the light beams, it looked like a V, and you can see prepare 3 times under that one.
Yep.
Okay, the top one is the children, but then the 2 lower prepares on the left and right are being projected on another screen, and then we see a giant V. Again, V. Right. What a coincidence. And then it pulled back, and within seconds, the football field started to explode as they're still singing prepare. And one of the kids went in a real high prepare, and then the explosion started on the left side, which is the side of the field for the Seattle Seahawks, and then the right side started exploding on the Denver Broncos side, and then the flares went off, the missiles went off. So prepare, and common sense tells me, Doug, all right, no one is going to be immune to this. There's not going to be any bias from the left coast to the right coast, from the Seattle Seahawks Stadium to the Broncos, all the way, all around. The missiles and the explosions are not going to hold back from anyone. The entire field erupted in missiles exploding, shooting off.
Both sides,
so prepare,
right? All sides, yes.
All sides, both sides. There's no winners. Now, what happened with the results of the score is another symbolic, very important thing that if we have enough time, I'll cover that. Otherwise, I'm going to be working on that on my next audio. But the prepare happened, and then we saw the explosion. So right there, common sense tells me that you put it together, we have flames. So the big question I was asking was, well, what do we prepare for later on under the explosion when you have the field exploding? It says the big question is why. What did it mean? A clue came later in the show. And now we have one of his final songs. This was at the very end when they did a military tribute, and he sang to a love song, and people, they had some images and video pre-recorded of our servicemen saying, I'm going to dedicate this song to my husband or wife. It was a very moving moment at the very end on the surface. You remember that part?
Yep.
Okay. This was a flash scene when you're looking under the explosion, there's the 2 chevrons on each side and then 2 flags on each side. You see that? Now make note, ladies and gentlemen, that there's 2 flags here and the chevrons, there's a left chevron and a right chevron, and they're pointing in opposite directions. And the U.S. flag is right under them. So common sense tells me, Doug, when you see a chevron, even on a highway sign, if it says left, then you go left. If it says right, you go right. These are chevrons, which we talked about what they mean to the occult, but also as a directional sign, the chevron above one of the flags is going to the right and one's going to the left. Why are they doing that is the big question. Well, during the prepare scene, the U.S. flag was briefly shown, and now you can go to the image below it where I flipped the image upside down, and it's kind of weird. It looks like a spaceship taking off. You see that?
Yeah, you flipped that. Okay, just to be clear, you flipped that image, or?
I flipped it upside down.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's weird.
Because I wanted to see what it looked like, and that's where everything came into focus. When you turn it upside down, it's like, you got to be kidding me. So I turned it upside down, and then I zoomed in. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking at those, it looks like a weird face, some weird, like a face, and then there's a flag on each side of him. Chevrons are under, and then there's a U.S. flag that's upside down. So do you see that? So then we zoom in, and and then you can see the upside-down flag, and it looks like the White House.
It does.
Or a rendition of the White House.
Yeah, it does.
You see that?
Holy cow, yeah.
Okay, and on top of the White House, looks like a giant head. The upside-down flag, then it looks like the White House, and then there's a head with giant bug eyes. Okay, as you scroll down, I have a picture of a fly.
Okay.
Okay. I have a picture of a fly, and then I have a picture of Obama with a fly on his face. So this is the question that I'm asking, ladies and gentlemen, Doug, and you can go back to the zoom in where it looks like the White House with a fly head over the White House and an upside-down flag. I am proposing this question, but I already have pretty much 100% certainty that this is going on already. We've talked about this in other programs, Doug and Joe, about the spirits that have already invaded the White House. Beelzebub is in there. Nurgle is in there. Demonic forces are in the White House. So Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, he is in control of the White House. So this image that I have right here, I find interesting because it kind of looks like Beelzebub on top of the White House in this image that when I zoomed in and turned it upside down. Now, some people could argue and say, no, that's a robot head, or I don't know what that is, Nathan, but that's not a fly head. Well, that's what I can see, though. So whether I'm right or wrong in this image, Joe and Doug, it sure looks like it, because in the spiritual realm, we've talked about this now for months. I believe it's seasoned already that the Lord of the Flies is in the White House. So how coincidental is it that we have this weird head that's popping up out of the middle of the ridge of the White House, and he's dividing the flag in two. And then we have the chevron going left to right. And we have the flag in distress. So what does this picture portray? Prepare for what, Nathan? What do you believe they're saying? This is what I believe the summary is. I believe they're telling us that we have to prepare for the United States to be cut and torn. It's going to be broken and fragmented. You have the left and the right going in each direction, and there's a spiritual subterranean from hell's underworld that's playing in this mix and in this equation. So, Joe and Doug, do you see that, the Beelzebub face?
Yeah, I do. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty strange. I mean, to the shape in general. So
I don't know, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, and you can just continue to chew it, Joe and Doug. All right, this is just what I'm presenting on the table from research. Now, aside from that, though, whatever that head is, let's dismiss that head, that face. Whatever it is, nevertheless, the flag is in two pieces, on the left and the right side.
Oh, yeah.
That's granted. And the chevrons are tugging it to the left and to the right. And we saw the flag fragmented into three parts. We saw the missiles flying when they said prepare, that there's going to be explosions, and we saw missiles above the children's heads. So in my opinion, I believe that this is telling us that war is in the horizon, and crisis, the destruction, the separation, and America is going to be torn apart. And the forces that are going to be behind it are not going to be random. It's not just going to be because it's a good intellectual idea. It's going to be because there are dark forces behind the scene, and because Satan has been thrown down and cast down on the earth. My last program that I put out, my Overcomer Series Part 2, I went into great detail that where we are in the envelope of time to be overcomers, that is sandwiched in the prophecy of Satan getting kicked out of heaven and being thrown to the earth with all of his colleagues, the fallen angels. And when that happens, we're going to have hell on earth. So the Illuminati knows this, and they can't wait, because Mr. Adam Weishaupt stated that, in his opinion, history has 5 different levels, and the rule of 5, the law of 5, has chaos in it. So even if we don't like the idea and the taste of chaos coming, those that are in charge of the world right now, the powers that be, who obviously have control of things. Now, Doug, you've had how many guests on your program that have talked about the powers that be that are controlling the Fed and the money system and manipulating the markets and the bond market and the treasuries and even the price of gold and all that mess? It's a sham. It's a lie. It's theater. So who's behind it? Well, evil is behind it. These rich men are behind it that can't get enough. The billionaire that's singing this song, that's telling us to prepare, is the one that's behind it. So behind the scenes, they have darkness in them, whether or not they know they're being controlled. And as we go down to where the next image is green, do you see the next image? We have it's yellow.
There we go.
Green.
Yep. Yep.
His Illuminati symbolism told the tale. Those two screens that were the U.S. flags then turned into spinning pyramids. And the lights behind Bruno Mars's head formed pyramids. And the stage is an upside-down pyramid. So we see the Illuminati symbolism. And then when we go down below that one, we see a different angle of Bruno Mars singing. The stage is a pyramid. Do you see that? And then we have the spinning Illuminati symbols. And I found something in this image where you can see the stage of the pyramid. Do you see the number 50?
I do.
The lights are shining, and that's on purpose. No other part of the stage is illuminated, or the field, except the 50, 5-0.
Yeah.
Is that...
how did I miss that initially, or how was that missed initially? Was that a constant illumination, or was that just a flash?
When I went in slow motion, it's the only part of the field that had the lights like that. I had to ask why. What does 50 mean? And that's where I went down the rabbit trail, and the trail of breadcrumbs, to the Illuminati's fascination with 5. Mr. George Bush started the Iraq invasion at 5:50 a.m. on March the 20th, 2003. So 50, it means something to them. Now, to the Illuminati, 50, the 0 in numerology for the Illuminati has no value, so you can just erase that, and it means number 5. So 5 is the level that culminates into chaos for the Illuminati, for Adam Weishaupt. So 5. There's the 5, and then we have a 0. Is the 0 also tied to the rings that we saw for Mr. O? Is that 5-0 representative level 5 with Obama's involvement, or is it 5-0? We could get pretty silly with this one. 5-0, Nathan. That's just Hawaii 5-0. It just means the police.
Hey Nathan.
That's all it means.
It could be the 50-yard line. The way looking at it now.
Well, it is the 50-yard line.
Blowing it up. Okay.
That's where all of this is taking place. But Mike, what I'm asking is, everything is deliberate in their symbology, and they either illuminate something or they don't. So the 50 being illuminated is deliberate, and so I have to ask the question, why? What are you telling us?
I got you. Okay.
So that question is still on the table, and I'm throwing some possibilities out. Does it mean the Illuminati phase that takes us into chaos, level 5? Is that what they're telling us? What does it mean? Or is it 50?
Regardless, it would fit. I mean, you're looking at 50 states, or the number 5. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it fits.
50 ways they rob us.
50 ways to leave your lover. Yeah, no, but folks, I'll tell you, what we're looking at here is an investigative process, and it's very interesting to see this and to take it and break it down in the way Nathan has done. Now, I know other websites and other hosts have done this, have broken it down, but not to this degree, not to this extent. And I think it needs this level of analysis, ladies and gentlemen, especially at this very point in time. Nathan, this is fantastic. Go ahead and keep going, brother.
Okay, so I was showing this to my wife last night, scratching my head, and I said, my brain is mush. I've been on this marathon for 100 hours. After a while, how your brain feels fried, Doug, and you as a researcher, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's like, man, I
you see monkeys. I mean, you're
tired.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was very late last night. It was about 1 a.m, and I brought my wife to my office, and I was studying this image, and I said, "Hon, help me out. What do you see when you see 50?" She goes, 50 states. And you said that a moment ago, Doug. The Illuminati is in control of 50 states. The crisis and the dismemberment is going to occur to all 50 states. It's going to happen. So I even took it to this point, and I'm not finished with this part, but I was just curious. And listeners, if you hear me say this and you say, "Oh, Brother Nathan, you really lost it," but I did this, Doug. In slow motion on my DVD recorder, I had it to very, very slow speed. I was watching the smoke as it would leave, when explosions would happen, when fireworks would happen, and I was wondering if any demons showed up. Can you see demons walk through the fire faces? In fact, this image where you see the 50, you see the green smoke right there above one of the triangles? It's over the orange triangle.
Yeah. Yeah.
I watched that in
What
slow
is that?
motion to see did it turn into something. So this thing has been very in depth, and again, by the way, I'm not done, but this has been the level of wanting to discover this, because I have to know, because if there's information here that the people need to know about, I want to share it. So that's been part of the journey. Now, again, the 50 states, the U.S. flag is shown in 3 parts, and so I placed that under there. And then when we got into some of the other music, I was wondering to myself, okay, if my theory that fire's coming to the country, disruption, crisis, war is coming, then will we see this theme in other songs? And sure enough, if you go down, do you see the flames behind Bruno Mars? There will be fire. The black image on the screen is an explosion with a mushroom cloud. And that image is found where you have the 50, the number 50,
right.
And you go down, there's the flag, and then Bruno Mars with flames behind him. Yeah. And you see the black behind him and inside the flames. If you're watching the actual video, that's a mushroom cloud. So you're seeing the beginnings. They showed a mushroom cloud behind Bruno Mars, Doug.
Okay.
So I have to ask the question, okay, Super Bowl symbolism people, why are you showing us a mushroom cloud? If it means nothing, why are there flames behind them? What are you trying to say? And if you're showing us flames, this is going to also be a theme. The field exploded in fire, and as the show continued, that screen behind them got pretty wide, and the flames continued. And as you can see across the backdrop, it goes all the way across. Do you see how wide the flames get? It became blatant and obvious. Flames were there.
Yeah.
Mr. Joe and Doug. So to the person that says, Nathan, I was watching the show, and all I heard was love songs. And songs how, he just wanted to party and be with girls. So I don't know what you're coming up with. Well, turn down the music, the haunting, hypnotic music that turns off our brains at times and subdues us and takes away our vigilance. Turn that part down and then watch it, because it paints a different image. So as the 2 things that were continual themes in the screen behind them, well, actually the 3 things, we saw the American flag, and then we saw flames and explosions, and then we saw the spinning Illuminati pyramid. And
that bothered me. That bothered me a lot. I saw that. Yeah.
Well, do we need to argue that, well, Nathan, come on, you're just making stuff up and you're trying to make something beta that's not. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the spinning pyramid, the Eye of Ra, that shape, the Egyptian thing, is there an argument on the pyramids, Doug?
Yeah.
The stage and the...
Why the pyramid? And I'm serious. Even if folks, even if you get to this point and you say, "Oh, all this is bogus," why the pyramid in this particular? Why the pyramid? Why the spinning pyramid? Why not make it some other type of visual effect? Because I don't. That to me is very blatant, and certainly it didn't have to be a pyramid, and it was. I mean, that. To me, kind of sealed the deal.
It did seal the deal. Now, as I was watching it, the program, after he sang 3 songs, then Red Hot Chili Peppers came out on the stage. And I've never been a fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They have a history of, it's just vile, and it's gross, to be honest. And, Joe, you played in the first, or was it the first or second hour? They were giving their thanks to Satan. And Mr. Flea, who's a world-renowned musician because he's real good at the bass, I think that there's a tendency at times to place a person's talent in front of their integrity and character and example and, as a role model. And so some people, because music is so important to them, and since God wired us to appreciate music because we are wired to worship God, as I stated earlier, I think there's a tendency for some people to disregard the blatant, vile, blasphemous nature of a musician just because they're talented. And yes, Flea's a talented bass player, but that doesn't dismiss that during their early years they used to play their concerts naked on the stage. And they did some fundraising shows naked.
Really? No. They did? Are you serious?
This is true. You can Google that. It's.
Oh man.
They did one fundraiser where the only thing they were wearing was tube socks, and use your imagination.
What were they? What were they raising funds for? Clothes or what? I mean, seriously, you got to be kidding me.
It's true.
Oh man. All right. Well. I mean, as if pledging your allegiance to Satan, and I'm serious. Can any reasonable person or a person of any reasonable sensibilities justify anybody publicly declaring their allegiance, love, or whatever to Satan? I mean, come on. Really? Go ahead.
Okay, I decided to go into the ether and look at some of the lyrics of their music. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if the Bible says to the pure all things are pure, and to the evil and the wicked, they don't have a problem with it. They see wickedness and everything, but they don't have a problem with it. So the line is in the sand to the individual that would want to justify evil, satanic music because of the talent, then they're sacrificing integrity and honesty and purity for God. God says no profane thing should be a part of us. I will not say any wicked thing before our mouth, and et cetera. I can go on. That's easy. The vile, the those that are full of lust, et cetera, are not going to inherit the kingdom of God. Paul tells us. If anyone has any question on how vile Red Hot Chili Peppers are, just Google the words to Sir Psycho, and that'll seal the deal right there. Because Sir Psycho is their singer talking about how he's a nymphomaniac and he's addicted to lust. The spirit of lust is in him, and he can't break it. It's everywhere he goes. So they are vile creatures. And I know that Flea has been known, and some people say he's so cool. Joe, in fact, I was sharing this with you in Back to the Future, Part 2. For those of you that saw that movie Back to the Future in the 80s, remember Michael J. Fox goes back in the future and goes back in time. And there's a scene where he has an accident. He runs into a Rolls Royce because someone dares him to race, and he crashes, and then he can't be a rock star. And in Back to the Future Part 2, at the very end of the movie, this guy comes to the red light, and his name is Needles, and Michael J. Fox is going to race Needles. Well, Needles is Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. That's why I'm bringing it up. So people see that part of Needles is so funny and cool. So, hey, no harm done. I don't see what your problem is, Nathan. But to show, I see that we just have a few minutes, Doug. This is what I want to leave with the audience. Satan uses his gifts and his abilities to hypnotize the world. And part of the hypnotic process is theater. It's using the pageantry of theater and the deception of his facades that he displays in front of everyone to trick them and to subdue their lives so that they will not want the truth. He keeps them entertained, and he turns off their brains so that they will not want to know the truth, so they won't lift their head out of the hole and wonder what's going on outside my little dungeon here. And one of the tricks that Satan uses is deception and theater. And we can see over and over that, Doug, the Soviet Union, Soviet Russia, the Chairman Mao, what were the tools that they used to subdue nations and take over for their demonic socialist ventures? Propaganda, the press, movie productions, radio shows. So theater is the consistent tool to trick people. And during the halftime show, when the Red Hot Chili Peppers came out and started playing, for those of you that aren't aware, Mr. Flea didn't even have his bass plugged in. The whole production he was doing, jumping around, fingers going up and down the bass, and the guitars, they weren't plugged in, and they didn't even have cords connected to their guitars. Did you know about that, Joe and Doug?
No, and what significance is that? I mean, aside from the obvious, or
the
is
NFL
it the obvious?
said we don't want you plugged in. Absolutely not. Something can go wrong. We don't want you plugged in. That was the excuse that was given. But as I was watching all the people dance around and cheer them, oh, look at him play, some of the other, in the entertainment community and in the music industry, most of the people said, well, you got to do what you got to do, so, no harm done. But Axl Rose came out in public and he said, what we saw was the greatest, most populated karaoke show in the history of rock and roll. 115 million people watched karaoke because the only person really plugged in was the singer, but the musicians weren't plugged in, so that's all it was. It was theater. It was fake. And here's the hidden message in that. When we watch the Super Bowl production and we watch this band that has all this notoriety, they were performing theater. It was all fake because they weren't really playing. And this is an example of how Satan is going to use theater to continue his quest and his conquering, his crusade over America and over the rest of the world. Theater is going to be used. The TV screen is going to be used. And we're watching a movie. By the way, The Hunger Games just came out with part 2, Catching Fire. And I watched that out of curiosity to see what they were trying to say. And I find that movie very, very telling and profound because I believe eventually that's where we're going to be. Where the state has control of all the people and they have an annual game where they forcefully pick out of different regions of the country to take part in a gladiator-type game where only one person survives and they all have to kill each other for entertainment and for sport. And in the Hunger Games, it shows how it's theater that keeps the people at bay. In fact, here's another interesting tidbit. Mr. Philip Seymour Hoffman, that just died on Super Bowl Sunday, plays the game maker in the Hunger Games, and his role was to make the theater, to keep everyone subdued. If you watch the Hunger Games, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, theater...
Do you find his death a little bit suspicious?
Kind of like the people getting suicide and accidentally falling off 50-story banks?
Yes. Yes. Imagine someone coming up to you and saying, hey, my specialty is celebrity suicides. Just think about that for a second. But do you find his death suspicious? I
have... the jury's still out on that. I have two sides I'm examining. Could not. I didn't know he was an addict, first of all. That struck me as I was surprised.
Well, aren't they all? But
the thing that's kind of corny, though, if it was blatant, how often do people die with the needle still in their arm? Because they put the needle in and then it's out of their arm and then they OD, right? But for it to be there, I mean, isn't that kind of, okay, everybody, now turn on the cameras. This is what happened. See, the needle's still in his arm. So that part's kind of corny.
Yeah, we know that a lot of heroin is being laced with fentanyl, but it does not react that quickly. I mean, normally you've got time to take the needle out. That's just me. I mean,
and that's the part I find corny. So yeah, your eyebrow goes up and says, "Really?" So anyway, I see we're running out of time, but Joe and Doug and listeners, theater is going to be used to brainwash you and to get a hold of your family, to get a hold of your children. Music is going to be used to sabotage your teenagers and keep them at bay, keep them shackled to Satan, keep them prisoners to the powers of darkness. So one of the areas, if someone's really struggling with their walk with God and their victory with Christ, I would say please be willing to take inventory of your source of entertainment, because there's a good possibility if you're struggling with darkness, with depression, with continual stumbling, that there's an area of entertainment that's in your life that needs to be just forsaken, exposed, gotten rid of. So take that to heart, please, ladies and gentlemen. And again, the propaganda machine is not going to stop. Doug, we see this happening. It's going to continue, and it's going to get more and more blatant and more in our face. So
it is. Yeah.
The summary of the message was that.
Go ahead.
I'll stop
the wrong
with that.
time here. Okay. Well, I just want to say this too, and I think the world and people, folks, look. Right now, it's the 7th of February. The Olympic Games have started. We know that just to put what Nathan said in context, prepare prepare. A big message at the Super Bowl. We know that once the Olympics are finished, because of Putin's position with the Olympics, and we've talked about this, folks, during previous programs, a lot of things could change, especially in the Middle East. That could bring about many things. And I do have a feeling that once the Olympics are over, we're going to be seeing a new chapter in American and world history. And I think that looking at what we've seen here tonight in that context, Nathan, I think you did a good job laying this out. And I think that, indeed, prepare is the operative word of the day.
Thanks for having me on, Doug.
Nathan, as always, we love you, brother. You just take care of yourself, and what a great job, a lot of work you did. And
Absolutely.
Folks, that's at watchmanscry.com. Watchmanscry.com. Go look at his intense, extensive analysis. To me, right on.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and listen again, even though I was following along and checking out the pictures and going through things as he said. Definitely something I'm gonna have to listen to again, because there is so much in there, and we know that, like you said, Nathan, prepare, because whether they're telling us to prepare or they're telling themselves to prepare, either way, it's not good. Something's coming. And
Indeed.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate your studying of that you put into this, and we can't thank you enough, and look forward to having you on again anytime.
God bless you, my friend.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
God bless. Bye-bye.
All right. With that, folks, we've reached the ending of the program. Interesting program it was. We had a great week. I want to welcome Joe back as well, and thank you all for listening to our broadcast, Joe. Yeah,
there was so much more we could have got into with Nathan, but unfortunately didn't have the time. And I want to thank everybody for, like I said, for the prayers, and thank you, Nathan, for taking the time and coming on the show. And we'll be back here Sunday night with Pastor Langford, Steve Quill, 8 p.m.
Oh, that's going to be a fantastic show. And make sure you have some anointing oil, olive oil or whatever.
Yeah. And until then, we'll be back at Sunday, 8 p.m., God willing. So stay safe, and we hope to see you all there. Have a great night.
Good night.